It's actually working. Wow. Okay. Um, I was supposed to stream last night, but what happened was that the page was freezing up and I was having weird internet problems. And at the same time, I was also trying to get a lot of videos onto my external hard drive, and it caused everything else to lag. So the page wouldn't respond. So chapter 12, drowning. I'm going to check in a few minutes to see that this really is working. I opened my mouth to cry out for help, but I had no more breath left in me. I couldn't see the surface. Everything blended together in a nightmare of darkness, and terror seized me so completely I couldn't think. This was it. This was the end. I really should have let Ava teach me how to swim. Having trouble, said a gruff voice beside me. As clear as if we were talking on the surface, I twisted around and nearly fainted with relief. Philip, Lord of the Ocean, floated beside us, looking as if he were walking on dry land. I didn't care that he must have known what we were doing or what I'd planned. I didn't care that if he knew, Walter must too. As long as I didn't spend the rest of eternity at the bottom of the sea, that would all be worth it. Help us, I mouthed, gesturing to the land that held James. The water was so dark that I couldn't see him any more. Of course, said Philip, and he looked in the direction that must have been up. A strong current caught the three of us, carrying us toward the surface with formidable speed. As soon as the blue sky became visible through the water, the tide dragged us to the side, and I clawed my way toward the surface, just a few more inches. Your stop, I believe, said Philip. Be safe. I nodded and mouthed my thanks. I could see James through the water now, and he was grinning at his uncle and giving him a stupid wave. Figured. We'd nearly drowned, and he was smiling. Finally, we broke the surface. I coughed up an impossible amount of seawater. Somehow my feet found the shifting sand, and I stood shakily, my knees knocking together. But we were out of the ocean and still had a few minutes left before Cronus expected me. That was the important part. Something flashed at the edge of my vision, and I looked around wildly, my heart pounding. For a split second, I thought I saw a dark-haired figure looming on the cliffs, but I blinked and it was gone. Deep breaths. We were out of the ocean, and I had nothing to panic about anymore, unless an eternal titan hell-bent on destroying everything I loved counted. Cool waves lapped at my shins, and James stood beside me, shaking like a leaf. All right, he rasped. I admit that asking you to do that without practicing first was a mistake. No crap, I said in a voice that trembled as much as his did. We stood a few yards from the shoreline of Curtis's Island, and the palace loomed above us, a giant shadow against the bright sky. Are you okay? I'll live, he said wryly. At least until we get inside. How are we getting through the barrier? I couldn't see it, but I could feel it, thrumming in my bones like a force field. If Cronus couldn't penetrate it, at least not enough to leave, even though his reach now extended as far as Cairo, then how are we supposed to? We walk, said James. The barrier's meant to keep Cronus trapped, not us. Walter even insisted we didn't modify it to include Calliope, until we realized she had you, of course. You mean, I faltered, I should have tried harder to escape. Somehow I could have found a way. Philip could have picked me up in the ocean and brought me to safety, or I steeled myself against the barrage of possibilities that flooded my mind. Playing what if wouldn't change anything. I had tried to escape. I'd done everything I could, and right now all I could focus on was how to make sure these things finally went my way. I mean, what? Said James, and I shook my head. Never mind, let's go. With my hand still in his and the taste of salt on my tongue, I dug my heels into the sand and pushed forward, trudging out of the ocean to meet my fate. A natural silence settled over the island. The cliffs overlooking the shore stood tall and unyielding, but despite their imposing height, James spent one of the few precious moments we had left trying to find the quickest way up. It's not going to work, I said, annoyed. We were wasting too much time. Let's just go around. That's miles out of our way, said James. Then give me your arm and I'll get us there. He snorted. You really think I'm going to put myself through that again? Do you really have a choice? I wobbled across the beach, the sand giving way with each step I took. Walk or reappear, James. It doesn't matter to me. I'm leaving in 10 seconds with or without you. Muttering something under his breath I didn't quite catch, he hurried over to me. If he wind up in the ocean again, I'm leaving. You're the one who insisted I had to bring you along in the first place, I said. Besides, stop pretending you didn't like that swim. I saw you grinning. Yeah, sheepishly. Philip's never going to let me live that one down. If they were both alive at the end of this war, taking his hand, I closed my eyes. No water this time, I promised. The air around us changed. The warm ocean breeze replaced with the stale scent of ancient rock. I sighed with relief. We were in the bedroom Calliope had kept me in for 9 months, and there wasn't a drop of water in sight. Much better, whispered James. I reached for the door. It was locked. Darn it, I muttered, but before I could complain or suggest another trip through nothingness, James touched the handle and I heard a faint click. Try again. This time the door opened without a hitch. I raised an eyebrow and he shrugged. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Together we sneaked out into the abandoned hallway. It wasn't nearly as decadent as the one outside the nursery, and I glanced around uneasily. I had no idea how to get there from here. I just want to check quickly that this is still working properly, so let me do that. Yep, it's working. Good to know. Alright. Together we sneaked out into the abandoned hallway. It wasn't nearly as decadent as the one outside the nursery, and I glanced around uneasily. I had no idea how to get there from here. Each end of the hallway looked identical. Left or right, it didn't matter, but Ava had pulled me right when Henry had attacked at the palace. Good enough place to start. This way, I said, creeping through the darkness, and James followed a few steps behind me. Someone had fixed the damage Henry had done to the castle, making the passageway clear. Are you sure? He said dubiously. Aren't you supposed to always know where you're going? Not in Titan territory. You're positive it isn't the other way? I ignored him. They had to have some way to move from floor to floor. I tried mentally to picture the parts of the place I knew. Palace I knew, but I couldn't remember ever seeing a staircase. Kate, said James with a hint of desperation in his voice, I think you're going in the wrong. A crash of metal against metal ripped through the air, and a man screamed. In an instant, James yanked me back so we were both leaning against the wall. What? I started, but he pressed his palm against my mouth. A cold giggle echoed down the hallway, and I turned my head enough to spot Calliope exiting a room at the end of the corridor. Humming to herself, she stepped through another doorway and disappeared, quickly followed by a stooped figure that couldn't have been anyone but Ava. Where was Cronus? And who was inside that room? Nicholas, breathed James. He's alive. My conscience pulled me toward Nicholas, but I'd come here for one reason and one reason only. As much as it killed me to sneak past his cell, if I wanted any real shot at saving my son, I had to. We'll come back for him, I said, half a promise to myself and half a promise to James. We wouldn't have a chance to come back for Nicholas, though, and we both knew it. James led the way this time, and despite my hissed protests, he opened the door that Calliope had disappeared through. I held my breath, certain she'd be waiting for us on the other side, fully aware we were there, but instead, guess there really is a stairway to heaven after all, said James with a grin. And if I wasn't already on edge, I would have laughed at his stupid joke. We hurried up the stairs in silence. 2 levels up, I nodded toward the door, and he pushed it open wide enough for one of us to fit through. Me first, I said. If Cronus was waiting on the other side, he wouldn't attack me. James, on the other hand, hadn't exactly been invited, slipping through the door into the empty peacock blue and gold hallway. I waited the space of 3 heartbeats before I flagged him to follow. Which one is Milo's room? I hadn't spent any time outside the nursery, but during my vision James had left. Fourth one down, he said. Kate, if anything goes wrong, hello there. Cronus's voice, frigid and void of compassion, slid down my spine. I turned on my heel, automatically stepping in front of James to shield him, but it was an empty gesture. If Cronus wanted to kill James, he wouldn't need any permission. I told you I was coming, I said icily, but it was nothing compared to the way Cronus spoke. He could freeze the sun if he wanted to. Yes, but I do not recall consenting to a guest. I can't very well head back to Olympus with Milo. James is going to take him for me. Is that so? Said Cronus, and James nodded. His eyes were too bright and his jaw rigid, but he raised his chin and stared Cronus down. Terror seized me. Cronus wouldn't hurt me, no matter how insolent I was, not as long as he thought I would be his. But James was expendable, barely anything more to Cronus than the millions of people he had already wiped out with a single thought. Yes, said James. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to do what I came here to do. By all means. A strange smile twisted across Cronus's two perfect lips, and he stepped aside with a flourish. What was Cronus playing at? James moved forward, and I went with him. If this was some kind of trap, if Cronus had known and was only setting James up. Cronus didn't try to stop me, though. James and I hurried toward the nursery, and my heart pounded. Was Milo still here? Had Cronus done something to him? James and I reached for the handle at the same time, but before either of us touched the metal fixture, the door burst open. Calliope. At first her blue eyes rounded with shock, but after a beat she smirked. She looked like she was my mother and Sophia's age now. Much more appropriate for one of the original 6, but that did nothing to distract me for the fact that she cradled Milo in her arms. Kate, she purred, how good of you to join us. Here I was thinking you were smart enough to stay away. Silly me. Kate, said a small voice behind her, and Ava appeared in the doorway. OMG, Kate, Cronus said you were alive, but I didn't think. Silent, said Calliope. Ava immediately quieted, and her cheeks flushed and her eyes danced with light. For the first time in nearly a year she looked alive. Calliope cleared her throat and turned to James with a simpering smile. Darling, it's been far too long. I'm not your darling. Give me the baby, said James, holding out his arms. Why would I do something like that, she said with a sniff. Callum is my son. I wanted to sink my nails into the pretty little face of hers and claw her eyes out. He's my son, not yours, I snarled. Cronus and I made a deal. I'm here and Milo leaves with James. Oh, Calliope peered over my shoulder. Why wasn't I part of this deal, father? It was not your deal to make, said Cronus. You will do as I say and uphold my word. What word is that? Said Calliope venomously, her grip tightening around my son. The baby will be returned to Kate's family and she will remain here with me. 2 red spots appeared on Calliope's cheeks, and she jolted strangely as if she were fighting against some kind of compulsion. And if I don't, then I will no longer have any use for you. She hissed. After everything I've done for you, after everything I've sacrificed, fury rolled off her in waves, and I had to force myself not to step away. I was so close to Milo that all I had to do was reach out and touch him. I couldn't leave him again. Is this your final decision, said Cronus, to part from our allegiance? For the sake of keeping a child that is not yours? He should be mine. Calliope moved back toward the nursery, but Ava blocked her way, a magenta glow emanating from her body. Don't make me do this, father. A glint of metal beside Milo caught my eye. Calliope pulled the blanket back, and before any of us could react, she pressed the dagger Nicholas had forged, the only weapon that could kill an immortal, against Milo's throat. I will not let him go, said Calliope, calmer now, as fear filled the air like poison. You've given away something that wasn't yours to give, father. Behind me, Cronus sighed as if he were dealing with a petulant child. Not a murderer who had no problem killing again. I will not ask you a second time. Turn over the child, or face the wrath of the king of Titans. Does the wrath of the queen of gods mean nothing, then? Said Calliope. Paralyzed with fear, I couldn't take my eyes from my son. I didn't care about a peeing match between them. All I wanted was for Calliope to move that blade away from Milo's neck. Calliope, you don't want to do that, said Ava, inching closer. Calliope wheeled around, her teeth bared as she clutched Milo to her chest. Don't you dare use your powers on me, she growled. Lifting the handle of the dagger, she pressed the point against Milo's chest. What will it be, father, your deal or my allegiance? Milo let out a soft cry, and I lunged forward, but before I reached him, Cronus grabbed my shoulders and pulled me against his chest, and no matter how hard I struggled, he didn't budge. I will not break my word to Kate, said Cronus without emotion, and I elbowed him hard in the stomach. Nothing. Do what you must, but make no mistake, our allegiance hinges on that baby's life. I thought I saw a flash of hurt on Calliope's face, but it lasted only a fraction of a second. So you've chosen Kate over me, she said, practically spitting my name. Then it hardly matters what I do, does it? Your allegiance will never be mine, and no longer will mine be yours. She raised the dagger, and a scream ripped through me and echoed through the palace. I couldn't watch, but I couldn't look away in the last seconds of Milo's short life either. I couldn't abandon him like that. The world darkened around the edges, and for one beautiful moment, I thought I was dying. My body went numb, my mind quieted into silence, and that second hung between us frozen. I would live with this fear forever if it meant this moment never ended. If Calliope never moved the blade closer, if Milo never died, if we all stayed this way for eternity. A flash of white light blinded me, and a darkness that crackled with power engulfed us. Calliope boomed an all too familiar voice. Put the weapon down and give me my son, Henry. It should have been possible for me to be any more afraid than I already was. But now seeing Henry float down the hallway with that black crowd around him, a choke hold of terror grabbed onto me and refused to let go. I was going to lose both of them. This time Calliope didn't try to hide her shock. Her mouth dropped open, but she also lowered the dagger. Henry, she said, what an unexpected surprise, and here father was telling me you were dead. She glared at Cronus, and his arms tightened around me until he was a millimeter away from crushing my bones into dust. You lied to me, he whispered in my ear, and his malevolence thrummed in the air around us. After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me? With deceit and mockery. I gulped. No more secrets now. The cards were on the table, and now all we could do was play. Give me my son, repeated Henry. He was less than a foot away from me now, but he didn't spare me a glance. And what do I get in this deal? Said Calliope, eyeing him hungrily. Me, said Henry quietly. Give me my son. Swear on the river Styx that you will never harm him or allow him to come to harm in any way, shape, or form, and you will have me. Henry, no, I gasped. And Cronus clamped his hand over my mouth. No, no, no. Henry was supposed to stay with Milo and keep him safe. I couldn't. Not the way he could. It had to be me. I had to be the one to stay. I tried to protest, whimpering and screaming and flailing against Cronus, but Henry ignored me completely. That will fulfill the terms of our bargain, said Cronus, and I stopped cold. The baby will be raised by his family, as Kate has demanded, and I will have her. No, that was not our deal. Not even close. Milo was supposed to be safe in Olympus with Henry, my mother and James, not down here with Calliope and Cronus. I couldn't speak, though, and no one was paying attention to me. Henry nodded once, and in that second my heart shattered. Very well, said Calliope, but despite the fact that she was getting everything she'd ever wanted, there was an edge in her voice, a hardness I didn't understand. She should have been celebrating. I was broken, I had nothing, and she had it all now. I swear on the river Styx that I will not harm this baby nor allow harm to come to him, so long as you stay with me. So be it. There was a soft thunder in Henry's voice, and my vision blurred. There had to be a way out of this. This couldn't be what Henry had intended. He wouldn't leave me like that. But hadn't I been willing to leave him? Perfect, said Calliope, and without turning her eyes from Henry, she said to Ava, do it. But Ava, her earlier courage failing, do it. Do what? It didn't take long for me to get an answer. The magenta aura around Ava grew until it touched Henry, and like lightning it hit Calliope. Instead of crying out, however, her smug smile only expanded. There, said Ava, her voice trembling. Now let Kate and the baby go. You heard, father, said Calliope. The baby stays with Henry. But if you insist, I will give him a choice. Henry, darling. She stepped toward him, and my heart pounded. Who do you want to stay with, me or Kate? Was this some kind of joke? Of course Henry wanted to stay with me, especially when we could all be a family. Henry stepped closer to Calliope, though, and my eyes widened. He set his hand on her cheek in the familiar way he always touched me, and then his eyes fluttered shut, and he leaned down to kiss her. What had Ava done? Stupid question. I knew exactly what she'd done, and no matter what her reasons were, no matter what Calliope was holding over her head, no matter how many times she cradled my crying son, I would never ever forgive her for making Henry fall in love with Calliope. Cronus moved backward, taking me with him. Panic seized me, leaving no room for rationality, and I clawed at his hands, desperate for him to let go. I couldn't leave, not now, not when my husband thought he was in love with someone else. Pulling away from Henry, Calliope eyed me with distaste. No, do not leave yet, she said in a regal voice that would have had Cronus smiting her 2 minutes earlier. And why is that? Said Cronus. Calliope smiled sweetly. Because I'm not finished with her yet. With no hand to guide it, the dagger rose in the air between us until it lined up with my throat, and in a blur of silver and steel it flew straight toward me. Chapter 13. Wicked Games. I didn't have time to think or breathe or worry about whether or not Milo would remember this moment. All I did was close my eyes. Time was supposed to slow down in the seconds before death, and I would really die now, with no underworld to catch me and no Henry to save me. But nothing changed. This was it. A great crunch of metal against metal echoed through the palace, and for one horrible second I thought Henry or even James had been stupid enough to jump in front of it. My eyes flew open, but they both stood several feet away on either side of the door, and floating in front of me, half an inch from my neck, was the dagger. I believe in the midst of forcing the Lord of the Underworld into your alliance, you have forgotten one important fact, said Cronus in a deadly voice that seemed to be everywhere at once. Your fate is tied to Kate's. If she dies, so do you. Surely you are not ready to fade, my dear daughter. Calliope's arms trembled so badly I feared she'd drop Milo. Henry gently took him from her, and for a moment I was sure she'd fight. He could disappear as soon as he touched the baby. All it would take was a blink, and Henry would be gone, safe back in Olympus with our son. But she willingly let him go. I held my breath, waiting for Henry to leave. He stayed put, though, a strange smile on his face as he gazed down at Milo. My heart sank. She had Henry now. She truly, truly had him. But the way he looked at the baby, the way his shoulders relaxed as he held him, Henry did love Milo. Ava hadn't taken that away from him, which meant a small piece of him, no matter how buried, still loved me, too. Here I was thinking you no longer had any interest in the little traitoress, said Calliope to Cronus, her words choked with fury. How silly of me to think you wouldn't fall prey to a human emotion. I am king of the Titans, said Cronus coldly, and he straightened to his full height, drawing me with him, so my toes barely grazed the floor. I have fallen prey to nothing. Yet here you are, protecting a mere goddess. A brand new one, at that, said Calliope. I glared at her. Not very formidable, but it was the best I could do under the circumstances. What has she done to deserve your loyalty? Was she the one to free you, to stand by your side as the gods lined up to fight against you? All this time she has been working for the enemy, discussing the secrets you have shared, planning a defense based on strategies you have so willingly shown her. Terrific. Now she was trying to get him to kill me. Calliope had it wrong, though. Cronus was the one who'd fooled me for so long. He was the one who'd gotten me to spill the council's secrets by making me think he was Henry. And without realizing it, she was confirming what their arguments had really implied. Cronus didn't care about her. She was a pawn exactly like the rest of us. Whatever his plans were, he wasn't sharing them with her. Unlike the council, Cronus and Calliope weren't partners. They were barely allies. In Calliope's desperation to escape from Walter, she managed to stumble across the only being in the universe who treated her even worse than he had, and judging by the look on her face, she was finally beginning to realize it. Cronus was quiet for a long moment, and darkness filled the hallway until I couldn't see an inch in front of me. I have shown her and told her nothing. There is no other explanation, said Calliope. The battles we have fought. There are always 2 steps ahead of us, circumventing my traps and plans, and they could not possibly know these things if you were not telling Kate our every move. He wasn't, though, which meant there was a traitor in Calliope's household. I glanced into the darkness where Ava was standing. Not possible. Silence, said Cronus, and he dropped me. I stumbled, and his hand caught my wrist. I will hear no more of this. If there has been any leak, it is not from me. Therefore, I can only assume it is you who is the traitor, my daughter, and I do not suffer treason. He yanked my hand until my fingertips touched another. James. No one else was standing in that direction. I am finished with this pointless debate. You have what you want, and my bargain with Kate is fulfilled. However, because I cannot ensure her safety, I cannot allow her to stay. At last Cronus let go of my wrist, and I understood. The inky clouds, his argument with Calliope, he wanted me to leave. I couldn't, though, not when Henry and Milo were in danger. I couldn't abandon them again. The air crackled with a different kind of power, but the darkness around us muted it, and Calliope let out a frustrated cry. You can't do this to me. She is nothing. Then tell me, said Cronus, if she is nothing, why do you care? Calliope blustered, and James gripped my hand so tightly that I thought my fingers would fall off. If I had any chance of getting him out of here alive, we had to go now. I couldn't be responsible for anything happening to him, but I couldn't leave either. And then in the emptiness, a midnight voice surrounded me. Go. Tears stung my eyes. Henry. There was nothing I could do, and he knew it. If I stayed, Calliope would kill me. Like our picnic in the woods when she'd revealed herself to be a traitor, she was too emotional, too irrational for me to depend on her thinking clearly. She'd known then that she would out herself as a murderer to the entire council, and she hadn't cared. I had no guarantee she wouldn't call Cronus's bluff now. I focused all my energy on Henry and pushed my thoughts toward him. I love you, don't ever forget that. Without giving myself a chance to change my mind, I clutched James' hand and disappeared. We landed on an abandoned beach as the sun dipped into the ocean. I sank onto the sand and James gathered me up, letting me cry into his shoulder without complaint. I'd left them. I'd sworn I would never abandon Henry, and the first chance I'd had, I'd done it anyway. If I'd talked to him before Cronus's deadline, we could have come up with a plan together. We didn't need the council's permission to act, and I'd leapt without thinking once again. This time it had cost me my family. I'm never going to see them again, am I said. The tide washed up inches from our toes, and we didn't have more than a few minutes before we'd miss our window to return to Olympus. The thought of going back without Henry and Milo ate away at me until there was nothing left but skin and bone. Walter and Dylan were right. The entire council was right. I wasn't ready to help them, and the more I did, the worse things got. What happened to you? Said James. What do you mean? He pulled back enough to look at me, his eyes searching mine. You're not the girl I met in Eden. She didn't break down into tears every time something didn't go her way. I'm not, I started, then another tear rolled down my face. My family's gone. No one's letting me help, and every time I try, I screw things up even worse. He threaded his fingers through mine. Since when did you ever need anyone's permission? I wiped my cheeks and squinted into the sunset. So what else am I supposed to do? I've already tried everything. My deal with Cronus fell through, and even if it hadn't, all it would have done was secure Milo's safety. It wouldn't have changed anything in the bigger picture, and the only way I'm ever going to see them again is if we win this war. So help us win, I sniffed. How? Think, he said. You know Cronus's weaknesses better than any of us. You know his strengths. You know him. Bullcrap, the original six fought him for a decade. I never so much as arm wrestled with him. No, agreed James, but you're the only one who's ever stopped him in his tracks. That moment in the underworld, as Cronus had chased us through a desert. I'd thought I was going to die then, too. Would that have made any of this easier? No, it wouldn't have, because the original six would have never escaped that cavern in Tartarus. They would still be here, unconscious and slowly dying, while Cronus and Calliope figured a way out. Everything would have been different. But even my one act of courage had been a supreme act of stupidity. Cronus was free because I'd walked into his cavern when Persephone had specifically told me not to, and I'd given Calliope the leverage she needed to get Henry to open the gate. Think, said James, why didn't Cronus kill you then? Because he didn't know me, because you were kind to him when the rest of us were doing our best to keep him chained. Because I promised I'd open the gate. Yes, said James, and he stopped because he trusted you. Look where that's gotten us, I said disdainfully. Yes, look where your stubbornness and refusal to give up got us. We have a fighting chance now. It wasn't the way we imagined, but Calliope would have discovered a way to free Cronus eventually. She had near close to eternity, just like the rest of us. I drew my knees to my chest. What happens if Cronus wipes out all of humanity and you lose all your purposes? James hesitated and fear sparked between us. He drew me closer. I don't know. Maybe you won't fade, I said. I mean, there's always going to be love and travel and music and gardens and everything, and maybe... Kate, James' voice rose above the crash of the ocean, and I fell silent. Don't worry about the worst-case scenario. Come up with a way to make sure that never happens. Focus on doing what you do best and fight for the people you love. He stood, and I rose with him, my knees shaking. No pressure or anything, I said, and despite everything, he gave me a boyish grin. On the contrary, you're a diamond. You shine under pressure. I half laughed, half choked. And you're a smelly block of cheese. Take me back before the sun sets completely. James clasped his hand in mine, his grasp firm and unwavering. Promise me you'll fight. No matter how bad things get, you won't break down and let Cronus and Calliope win. I shook my head minutely. I couldn't promise that. I would fight for as long as I could, but Calliope had my family, and after 2 failed bargains, Cronus would undoubtedly be hell-bent on destroying humanity and everything that had ever been familiar to me. How long before my mother faded? James? The entire council? I couldn't fight if I had nothing left to fight for. Then do not let that happen. Henry's voice echoed through my mind, and I looked around wildly, searching for any sign of him. Of course he wasn't there, though. He was Calliope's prisoner now, a willing prisoner who didn't know that when he kissed her, when he caressed her, he didn't really feel any of it. He didn't know it was a trick, but I did, and I couldn't leave him to suffer through an eternity of her sickening games. I won't, I thought in return, hoping like crazy it reached him. Promise me, Kate, said James, and I blinked. Promise me that you won't give up on your family. Steel slowly wrapped around my spine. He was right. Henry needed me. Milo needed me. Whatever it took, there was no way I was going to let Calliope win. Fine, I promise. Now let's go convince Walter to stop being an egotistical... James snorted. Your words, not mine. We arrived in the center of the throne room. I wasn't sure what I'd been expecting, but the full council, minus Calliope, Henry, and Nicholas, wasn't it. Everyone was there, even Ella and her silver arm. Her face was pinched as if she smelled something disgusting, and she stared into the center of the throne room where James and I stood. What's going on? I said, turning to Walter. He, too, stared into the center of the circle with a stony expression, but James pulled me aside, and Walter's gaze didn't waver. He wasn't staring at us. Instead, exactly where we'd been standing was Ava. Or at least a version of Ava. Her form looked substantial, but only seconds before we'd occupied the same space. She wasn't really there. James let go of me and sat down, and I followed his lead, trying to ignore the pain in my chest when I saw Henry's empty throne. When I settled in mine, my mother took my hand. I'm sorry, said Ava in a choked voice, as clear as if she were really standing there. Golden light flowed from 4 of the thrones. The remaining original siblings, including my mother, each ran into the center of the circle, meeting where Ava stood. The council was doing something that made her being there possible. I want to come home. You cannot come home, said Walter in a painfully neutral voice. I had good reason to never want to talk to her again, and after what she'd done to Henry, that stabbing hatred at the very sight of her returned to me. And this time I was positive Calliope had nothing to do with it. Walter was her father, though, and she was his favorite. Why didn't he care? I can't do this anymore, Ava's voice broke, and she turned to look each council member in the eye. When ours met, she winced, and I held her stare. Can't do what anymore? It wasn't my place to speak, but I couldn't stop myself. Can't assist a mass murderer in getting his way? Can't do laundry for someone who steals innocent babies? Her lower lip trembled, and I scraped my nails against my throne. I'd had to risk my life, my family, everything to earn a spot on the council to prove I was worthy of ruling the underworld with Henry. Yet they were allowed to hurt as many people as they wanted so long as it meant they got their way. I was sick of it. Please, she begged, her hands shaking as she stepped toward me, but the golden light wouldn't hold her, and she was forced to return to the center. Kate, I love you. Calliope made me. Please understand, I never wanted any of this. There comes a point in your life when you have to make a choice, I said. You can keep going down the easy path, no matter where it takes you. Everyone else be darned. Or you can fight for what you believe in. I am fighting, she exploded. I am doing this for Nicholas and Milo and Henry and all of you. Don't you get that? Do you think I wanted to walk away from my family like this? I have a son too, Kate. I know what it's like to love someone as much as you love Milo. Do you think if I had any other choice? Enough, Walter's voice, low and anything but neutral now, echoed through the throne room. You have said your piece, daughter, and now you must allow the council to screw the council. Ava didn't so much as look at her father, and if she'd been more than an illusion, I had no doubt the room would have crackled with power. As it was, no one dared to speak. Even Walter looked as if she'd slapped him across the face. I want you to listen to me, Catherine Winters, she said. Everything I have done, every word, every look, every betrayal, has been to help our family. Doing the right thing doesn't always mean acting like a saint. Sometimes it means getting your hands dirty and doing the things you hate most so other people might have an easier time of it, so other people might not die. If that's your excuse, then how do you justify dragging Milo into it? I snapped. He was never supposed to be part of it. He was never supposed to exist. But he does. He's here, and now Calliope has Henry too, all because of you. The council remained silent, and not even my mother reacted, so I'd been right. They all knew exactly what he'd planned to do, and none of them had stopped him. Ava took a deep breath. I'm sorry, she said in a measured voice, and it was such a change from seconds before that it took me a moment to understand she was sincere. Something ugly surfaced inside me. I didn't want her to apologize. I wanted her to fight. None of this should have happened. No matter what stupid mistakes I've made, I'm sorry for those, Kate. I'm sorry to all of you for leaving you. I never wanted to, but like I said, I didn't have a choice. Ava, Walter's voice reverberated through the throne room. You've done enough, Daddy. It's my turn to talk now, she said with inhuman quietness. I'm sorry for everything. I love you all, and I did what I thought I had to do, but Henry's here to protect the baby now, and I can't do anything more to help Nicholas. Around the circle, several council members glanced at Nicholas's empty copper throne. You are willing to abandon him, knowing it may mean his death, said Walter. I'm more a danger to him if I stay and give Calliope the chance to use him and keep controlling me, said Ava. He wants me to go, and the only way I can help save him is to return to Olympus. Cronus has decided he's going to escape the island on the winter solstice, and given that he's shown himself to be capable of, I believe him. I want to help. In that moment, she didn't sound like the Ava I knew, the selfish, simpering goddess of love who couldn't prioritize what others needed before what she wanted. She sounded old, haunted, like the other members of the council did when they were so deep into planning that they let their masks slip. It was one more reminder of who and what they were, ancient, powerful, wiser than I could ever imagine, but short-sighted and close-minded as well, cut off from the real world like the humanity they struggled to defend, stubborn and as passionate about protecting their own interests as they were about doing their jobs. That was Ava, stubborn and passionate, and now lost to me as completely as our father was. I am sorry, daughter, said Walter, but he didn't sound very sorry at all. We cannot pretend to know Calliope's intentions. We must act cautiously. It is possible that Nicholas remains alive only because Calliope believes he is the key to controlling you. If you abandon her, there is no telling what she might do to him. A murmur rose from the other members of the council, but no one objected. I didn't blame them, as much as it pained me to admit it. Walter was right. You will remain with Calliope until given further instructions, said Walter. You will carry on as normal, with no sabotage or acts of will toward her. She must believe that your intentions are pure. But you haven't even discussed it, cried Ava, and Walter raised his hand, cutting her off. There is no need. 2 of our own are now at the mercy of Calliope and Cronus, and we cannot upset the balance until we are ready for a fight. We will heed Cronus's deadline, though we already expected it. Any further information you acquire will be useful to us, but do not give it at risk of the prisoners. I don't count as a prisoner, she said, her eyes watering, because I don't fight the way you do. I'm not worth saving. For a fraction of a second, Walter's expression softened. My dear, of course you are. I've done everything you asked me to, said Ava. I've risked my life, my integrity, my friends, all for false promises. Turns out you're just as bad as Calliope is, Daddy. But at least she doesn't pretend to be something she isn't. Stunned silence. Was she telling the truth? Had he really asked her to do all of those things? Walter paled, but he didn't argue, and that alone was an admission of guilt. So it wasn't entirely Ava's fault after all. She wasn't blameless, not by a long shot. But she wasn't alone in this either. Henry had been right. Walter had known I was pregnant. He'd known where I was and what was happening. He'd known, and he hadn't done a thing to stop it. And the things he made Ava doing, no thing that it would affect everything. Knowing how the rest of the council would see her, how could he possibly hurt his own daughter like that? I'll agree to return Calliope under your terms, as long as you agree to fulfill one of mine, said Ava. I want to talk to Kate alone. A murmur rose from the other members of the council, and my eyebrows shot up. You know that is not possible, said Walter. It is draining enough for us to maintain this method of communication without Calliope and Henry. Then she can come to me, said Ava. Out of the question, my mother's voice rose above the others, and they fell silent. I will not have her risk herself again. It is a miracle she managed to get out of there in the first place. I know how her visions work, said Ava. I know she can see me and hear everything I say. I don't need her to talk back to me. I just need her to listen, and I won't agree to your terms until Kate agrees to mine. Whatever she wanted to talk to me about, she couldn't say it in front of the others, which meant she thought she couldn't trust them, or at least couldn't trust her father. Something about Henry, about Milo? Had she found a way to smuggle him to me somehow? Hope surrounded me, so fragile and delicate that a single word could have shattered it into pieces. It was possible because it was possible I would do it. I nodded once, and Ava deflated, as if she'd used up everything she had to make it to that moment. "Tomorrow at sunset," she said, "in the nursery. I trust you to be there." She had no way of knowing if I would be, but she was smart enough to know that she had me hooked, and I wouldn't miss it. "I love you," she said, and this time it wasn't directed at any one person. Instead, the words whispered through the council, touching each of us as they passed. "Goodbye for now." The golden light in the sunset floor flashed, and she was gone. For nearly a minute, no one spoke. Not to talk about Ava, not to ask James and me what had happened on the island, nothing. Finally, Ella and Theo rose. "We must return," said Theo. "Thank you for including us, Father." Walter nodded, and confusion washed over me. "They weren't here to fight? What about the war?" I blurted. "I thought—" "We are doing what we can on Earth," said Theo. "We've made overtures to many of the minor gods, and not even Nike will support us, not without Henry." "And the twins?" said Walter. "I thought you were making headway with them." Ella frowned. "Lux was receptive until you turned down his terms. Now they're disappeared again." "And it was hard enough tracking them down the first time around. I'm not going through that again." James' expression grew distant. "They're in Paris. It doesn't matter now," said Theo. "We can't force them to help. Even the Fates have gone into hiding. Everyone's scared, and nothing we say or do can smooth things over. They're convinced if they don't help us, Cronus might spare them." "Fools," muttered Walter. "Very well. Keep me as updated as you can." Theo and Ella nodded in unison. A split second before they disappeared, her eyes met mine, and I swore I saw pity. "Come," said my mother, and we both stood. "You've had a long day, and I'm afraid it isn't going to get any easier. You need to rest." "You too," I said, taking her hand. As we walked down the hall, her shoulders slumped, and she paled with the effort it took to make it to her room. I wrapped my arms securely around her. After all she and I had been through together, after all we'd managed to survive, how long would it be before Cronus took her from me too? Chapter 14. Chains on Fog. I told my mother everything that happened in Calliope's palace, and though she didn't confirm my fears, I knew I was right. She'd known about Henry's plan, maybe she'd even helped him, and from the way she kept touching my face, it was easy to tell she was glad it was him Calliope had taken, not me. "We'll figure it out," she murmured as we curled up on our bed together. We made it this far, after all. I wasn't sure who she meant. She and I, the council, did it even matter? This would end one way or another, and no one, not even my mother, could reassure me that everything would be okay. Not this time. It took me ages to fall asleep, and when I did, I dreamed of Henry whispering words I didn't understand. Dozens of questions swirled through my restless mind, but that voice offered no answers. Why had he gone through with this, knowing what it might mean? Had he done it purely to protect Milo? I'd had it handled, more or less. I hadn't anticipated Calliope interrupting, but Henry couldn't have possibly known she would either. He should have stayed behind. He would have been much more useful as a weapon Cronus and Calliope didn't know about. He might have been the weight that tipped the balance away from them and toward the council instead, and he'd given that up to turn himself over to Calliope. I wanted to be mad. I wanted to be furious, to rip the room apart until there was nothing left. It wouldn't accomplish anything, though, and the best I could do was exactly what James had asked of me, to focus my efforts on thinking of something that the council hadn't. Right, wasn't pride the very thing that had nearly lost me, Henry, and my mother, and my immortality in the first place? But the members of the council weren't exactly angels either. They could do whatever they pleased, and if they could cheat, so could I. Pride it was then, along with a sight of wrath for good measure. If there was a way out of this, I would find it. After a restless night and even more fitful day, the sun set on Greece, and at last it was time. As the council disappeared from the throne room to battle against an enemy no longer had a prayer of defeating, I closed my eyes and slid into my vision. Ava was waiting for me in the nursery, exactly where she said she would be. Milo wasn't in his crib, though. Ava's arms were empty, and Cronus wasn't standing in the shadows rocking him either. Henry must have had him then. Peering anxiously out the door, Ava pressed her lips together, oblivious that I was waiting. I glanced over her shoulder and followed her gaze to a window in the hallway. Though I saw half a dozen small shapes attacking an opaque fog, the evening's battle had begun. "Kate," said Ava, turning so suddenly that I didn't have time to move out of her way. She walked right through me. "Are you here?" I didn't bother to reply. She wouldn't be able to hear me, so it was useless. She stared into the empty nursery, and her shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry. I know you don't want to hear it, but it's true. I swear to you, I didn't know what Calliope was planning." This was it, another round of apologies? I huffed and closed my eyes, ready to return to Olympus. I'd come, I'd listened. I wasn't going to waste my time with this any longer. I know the last thing you want to do is trust me, echoed Ava as I slipped back to Olympus. But I need to show you something. I snapped back into the nursery, hungry with hope, glancing around as if she wasn't sure I was there. Ava exited the room and I followed her on her heels. She led me down the hallway and the narrow staircase I'd used the day before. We stopped on the same level that held my prison. My stomach exploded with butterflies. Where was Ava taking me? Calliope couldn't possibly be holding Henry down here, could she? Ava paused at a door, Nicholas's room. The clank of metal against metal ripped through the silence, mingling with his screams. I flinched, but Ava pushed the door open and stormed inside. I hurried after her. You swore you'd stop, she said, and it took me a moment to realize she wasn't talking to me. I did what you told me to. Now you hold up your end of the bargain. Calliope stood in the middle of a dank room with shelves and work tables along the edge. Discarded scraps of metal and dozens of weapons, some glowing weakly and others nothing more than lumps of steel, littered every surface. Nicholas's forge. This was where he'd made that dagger. Right beside the dying fire in the center of the room, someone had welded a metal chair to the floor with opaque fog. Nicholas slumped against it, bloody and broken in ways gods shouldn't ever have been. He was half conscious, his face slashed and purple and his body a mess of cuts and bruises. Your side of our deal hasn't been finished yet, said Calliope. Kate is still alive. Ava scowled. That has nothing to do with— I don't care, Calliope's voice sliced through the air like a scythe. You will do what I say, or I will kill Nicholas. That is all there is to it. He groaned, his eyeballs moving underneath his swollen lids, and Ava reached for him. Calliope stepped between them. I don't think so, she said with girlish delight. You know what happens if you touch him. I don't care any more. Ava darted around Calliope and knelt beside the chair. Nicholas, I'm here. I'm so sorry, baby. Nicholas tried to mumble something through his cracked lips and broken jaw, but it was unintelligible, to me at least. Ava's eyes filled with tears, and she gently took his hand. With her skin touched his, a hissing sound filled the tiny prison, and Ava winced. But it wasn't until Nicholas grunted that she let go. Where she touched him, her palm turned scarlet as if she'd handled hot embers. I will release him once I have won the war, said Calliope, no sooner. Ava's face twisted with barely contained rage, and she shifted her stance as if she were about to throttle her. Calliope must have noticed too, because in the blink of an eye the dagger appeared in her hand, and she held it delicately to Nicholas's throat. I wouldn't if I were you, my dear, she purred. It was a shame I was insubstantial, else I would have happily punched her lights out. Ava clenched her fists, apparently having the same idea, but she made no further move toward Calliope. You monster, she hissed. He's your son. We all make sacrifices. Surely you of all people must understand that. The room trembled, and like she had the night before, Ava began to glow magenta. No wonder Daddy never loved you. There's nothing lovable about you. All this time I thought he was in the wrong treating you the way he did, but you deserved it. You pervert love and family until they're unrecognizable, all for your own twisted sense of satisfaction. No one, not even Cronus, deserves to burn in Tartarus more than you do. Is that so? Said Calliope in a dangerous voice. It must be such a pity for you, then, knowing we will win and you will never escape me. Oh, I will, said Ava. First chance I get, I'm getting the H out of here. And what's going on? Henry stood in the doorway, cradling Milo. I moved toward them so fast that I could have sworn I created a breeze, but Henry looked straight through me, his focus on Calliope. A knife twisted in the pit of my stomach, but he couldn't see me. He had no idea I was there. Even if he did, he'd still be looking at Calliope like she was the most beautiful thing in the world. Hello, darling, said Calliope. I was just coming to see you. How's the baby? He's fine. Henry gave Ava a curious look when she averted her eyes, her hand hovering half an inch over Nicholas's. What's going on? Ava here seems to believe that despite his crimes against us, Nicholas is entitled to leave now, said Calliope, and she giggled. If we could afford such a risk, we can't have Nicholas rushing back with our secrets now, can we? Henry eyed Nicholas the way he looked at Calliope after the brothers had captured her in the underworld and tied her up in chains. My stomach lurched. The Henry I knew had to be in there somewhere, but right now this wasn't him. No matter how badly it hurt, I had to remember that. Whether it was Ava's influence or Calliope's power to cut the ties of loyalty between Henry and the rest of the council, it didn't matter. He was the enemy now. No, not the enemy, as much of a prisoner as Nicholas and Milo. Of course, my dearest love, said Henry, and I gagged. We will do what we must to ensure victory. Crossing the room, he gave Calliope a sensuous kiss. I shielded my eyes and scowled, but despite my best efforts to ignore them, I couldn't resist a glance, and that's when I saw it. Henry's eyes were open, and he was staring right at Ava. In his arms, Milo stirred and reached for me. He knew I was there. Did Henry know as well? He wasn't Cronus. Calliope would never kiss him like that if he was. But could he sense me? To my astonishment, Ava nodded once, so slightly that at first I wasn't sure if I'd seen her right. Henry closed his eyes again, however, and I wasn't certain Henry and Ava were working together against Calliope, for Calliope, to save Milo, or had she told Henry that I would be here and listening in on everything that happened? I couldn't be sure unless Ava told me, and whether or not Henry knew I was there, he was still kissing Calliope. Maybe he had to. Maybe he wanted to. I didn't have the answers, but that didn't matter. He wouldn't have been kissing her if it was up to him, and I had to hold on to that. At last Calliope pulled away and touched her swollen lips. Perhaps we should retire to the bedroom. Oh, God, were they sleeping together? Nausea overwhelmed me. Knowing he'd been with Persephone eons ago was one thing, but this was too much. He was my husband. My Henry, not hers. Yes, said Henry quietly. Allow me to take care of the baby, and then I will join you. With a giggle, Calliope kissed him once more and glided out of the room. For a split second, Henry deflated, his arms tightening around Milo protectively, and then he met Ava's gaze again. Neither spoke. At last Henry turned and left the room, leading Nicholas bound to the chair. I closed my eyes. This wasn't him, and if we had any chance of getting through this without our relationship being irreparably damaged, I had to remember that. Just like I'd offered myself to Cronus in exchange for Milo's safety, Henry had done the same with Calliope. I had no right to be upset with him. With Calliope and Ava, every single member of the council who'd let him do this. Yes, but not Henry. Kate, said Ava once he was gone. I opened my eyes. Nicholas was unconscious again, his chest rising and falling shallowly, and Ava stood beside him. Now do you understand? I understood. It didn't excuse any of this, and it didn't fix our friendship, but I understood. Henry still loves you, you know. I didn't take that away from him. I never could. She made him fall for Calliope, though. Artificial or not, it was still love, and it wouldn't erase what happened to that bedroom. I shuddered. I had to stop thinking about that. I'd seen enough. Ava had apologized so many times that the words were meaningless now, and I had to leave before the hurt dug so deeply inside me that I could never get it out. I was halfway gone when Ava spoke. Cronus is going to escape on the winter solstice. She'd already told the council that, though, and she knew I'd been right there with them, and I sank deeper into oblivion, already on the edge of ending this vision. And, said Ava, her voice so distant that it was little more than a whisper, the first place he's going to attack is New York. Chapter 15, Breaking Point. I snapped back to the island so quickly that the room spun around me. Dizzy, I waited for Ava to finish, but an explanation never came. She knelt beside Nicholas again, murmuring words meant only for him, and I turned away. There was only one reason Cronus would specifically attack New York, when so many others, London, St. Petersburg, even Beijing, had to be closer, and that reason was me. This time, when I faded from Nicholas's torture chamber, I didn't reappear in Olympus. Instead, when I opened my eyes, I was in Milo's nursery again. Cronus stood in a dark corner as if he were waiting for me. If I hadn't been sure of some sort of connection between us before, I was now. He was keeping tabs on me, watching me the way only a Titan could. I shoved him as hard as I could, but of course it didn't do any good. He peered down at me, his chin raised and eyes narrowed. What have I done to deserve such harsh words? Have I not offered you everything, yet endured your lies again and again? I gritted my teeth. You're going after my home. Your home is in the underworld, and I assure you I have no intention of removing you from my path the way I will the rest of the council. You will have eternity to remain there with the billions of souls who will die at my hand. Perhaps if you behave, I will allow you to join me on the surface for a time. Much like the arrangement you currently have with your very much alive husband. Cold horror settled over me. Why are you doing this? I came to you. I was going to hold up my end of the bargain. I didn't know. You didn't know what, said Cronus with that dangerous neutrality that was infinitely more frightening than anger. That your dear Henry was alive? I didn't know he followed me, I said. I didn't know he had a plan. I'm sorry. Cronus tilted his head. No, you are not. You are sorry you have lost that which you thought you could keep hidden. You are sorry you are not the one who was allowed to sacrifice yourself for your loved ones. You are sorry you will be forced to remain alive after I've torn apart everyone you have ever cared about. You are sorry that you have lost your son, but you are not sorry you lied. An invisible weight rested on my chest. You're right, I said shakily. I'm not sorry about lying, but I'm sorry for all of those people who are going to die, and if you hadn't pushed it to this point, I would have been sorry for hurting you too. Cronus touched my cheek with a ghost of affection. I thought you were different, Kate Winters. I thought you understood. I do, more than you've ever understood me. A lump formed in my throat, but no tears came. Begging and pleading wouldn't do me any good. But there had to be a way to fix this somehow, to make him understand. You don't deserve this kind of pain, but then again, neither do I. Neither does the Council, and neither do the billions of lives you're going to destroy. The only difference between us and humans is death. Even now, with you here, there is no difference. Can you imagine it? An ending, a moment where you cease to exist, and the people who love you? What they would go through? Enough, he said, and I searched his face for some flicker of emotion, but I found none. I have made my decision. I will not show you mercy when you have shown me none. The war will continue, and I will not surrender or agree to a truce. I have tried to extend the hand of peace to the Council, and they spit in my face. I confided in the one person I believed understood me, and you turned out to be the greatest liar of them all. We have nothing more to discuss. Before I could protest, Cronus disappeared, and my hands touched nothing but air. Air. He was gone along with any hope I had of preserving my family. I stared blankly into the empty space. As soon as Cronus escaped on the solstice, this would cease to be a war. It would be a bloodbath. There had to be something I wasn't seeing, something I could do to get him to change his mind. But what could I give him now that he didn't trust me? What words could I possibly say to fix this? A soft gurgle caught my attention, and I turned in time to see Henry wander into the nursery with Milo in his arms. He'd certainly taken his time getting up there. Had he detoured? He must have. I silently prayed it wasn't to see Calliope. Here we go, said Henry gently. You're safe here. He walked past me so slowly that he seemed to be moving through molasses. No wonder he'd taken so long. A turtle could have outpaced him. Upon spotting me, Milo waved his arms, and I managed a tearful grin. Hi, baby, having fun with your daddy? He gurgled, and Henry smiled. I wish I could stay here too, but I will be back before the moon disappears from your window. In the meantime, I am sure your Aunt Ava will be here soon to keep you company. With a wave of his hand, the cradle moved a few inches, presumably into a position where Milo could see the moon. A sob caught in my throat. Henry pressed his lips to the baby's forehead for a long moment before straightening. Be good, he murmured, and looked straight at me. Your mother and I love you. I froze. Did he know? Was it a coincidence? Another trick of Cronus's? And I love you. Though his lips hadn't moved, his voice whispered through my mind, and I held my breath. Just like Milo, he knew I was there. Ava hadn't lied. She hadn't taken that love away from him. I know what you're doing. I pushed the words toward him, and he turned away to stare into Milo's cradle. And I hope you can fight what Ava's making you feel, because once this is over, I'm never letting you go again. It might have been my imagination, but I could have sworn he smiled. This will end, and we will be together again. My thoughts were firm and unyielding now. Just stay with me. Don't let Calliope convince you that you're someone you're not, and everything will be okay. I will make sure of it. Without so much as a glance my way, Henry walked toward the nursery door. But as he moved by me, his hand passed through mine, and this time I knew it was no accident. So will I. When I returned to Olympus, the council was waiting for me. Everyone looked exhausted and well past their breaking points, with dark smudges under their eyes and pale skin that seemed to stretch too tightly over their faces. Kate, said Walter. Even he looked spent. Do you have news? Now they waited to hear what I had to say. I bit back a sharp reply. They'd gone through enough that evening without having to deal with my inflated sense of injustice as well. Calliope really is torturing Nicholas to keep Ava in line. She has a room full of weapons I think he made. Some of them look like test weapons before she finally settled on the dagger, and enough of them are infused with Cronus's powers that if we can get close enough, maybe there's a chance we could use them. And Walter raised a weary hand, and for once I fell silent. If we are fortunate enough to get that far past Cronus's defenses, it means we will have already won. The note of inevitability he'd always used whenever he spoke of winning the war had disappeared. What happened during the battle today? I said, and half a dozen of them looked away. Cronus was more focused than usual, said my mother. We were lucky no one was injured. He's fighting harder because of me, I said across the circle. Dylan scoffed. Always because of you, isn't it? Couldn't possibly be because he's getting stronger. The closer we get to winter solstice, could it? Maybe, I allowed, but I don't think it's a coincidence. This happened the day after he found out I'd been lying to him about Henry. Dylan scowled, but he didn't say anything else. How is Henry? Said Sophia. Did you see him? I nodded. What would they do if they knew Calliope had somehow convinced Henry to fight for her? Would they treat him like the enemy too? He might still love me, but love wasn't enough to convince the council that he wouldn't fight against them if Calliope ordered him to. He's fighting her, I said. A half-truth at best and a full-out lie at worst. There's only so much he can do without giving himself away, but he's still in there. Good, said Sophia, settling back in her throne. She doesn't know him like she knows the rest of us. Gives her less of a chance to exploit his weaknesses and use them against him. That was exactly what she was doing, though. She knew his weaknesses. She knew he would do anything to protect me and Milo. Maybe she'd even asked Ava not to take his love for me away from him, so he would remember why he was doing this, or maybe she'd done it just so he could feel the heartbreak when he kissed her and remembered who he was really supposed to love. What did Ava want to discuss? Said Walter. She wanted to apologize and try to explain. It was the truth, for the most part. She told me that Cronus is going to attack New York once he's escaped. A murmur rippled through the remaining members of the council, and James said to Dylan, Need any more proof that he's doing this because of Kate? Shut it, muttered Dylan, and James gave him a satisfied smirk. He might have liked rubbing his brother's nose in it, but I wouldn't have given anything for Dylan to be right. Very well, we will prepare for that outcome then, said Walter, and I blinked. What if Ava was lying to me, I said, and Walter shrugged tiredly. Then we are doomed. He stood on trembling legs. Go rest and recuperate. We will not talk tomorrow or any other day until the winter solstice. Dylan rose with what he must have intended to be indignation, but he looked more like an old man rising from an armchair that was too short for his legs. We're giving up? We are saving our energy and strategizing, corrected Walter. We have exhausted our means as they are, with Cronus using the shields on the island against us. Now we must plan a different approach. He nodded to me. Kate, I would like you to join us. Me? I said, stunned. And my mother patted my hand. I don't know the first thing about planning a war, but you have spent the most time in Cronus's presence since his escape, and we can no longer ignore the validity of your claims, he said. We will collect what information you can during the day, and the council will gather each evening to receive it, unless anyone has any other ideas, he said, looking squarely at Dylan. Dylan shrugged and said nothing. Very well, the council dismissed, said Walter. And with enormous effort that showed in every step he took, he headed toward a corridor I'd never been down. The other members of the council filtered out of the throne room until only James, my mother, and I remained. Despite looking half a second away from passing out, James crossed the circle towards us, wearing an exhausted smile. Seems you finally got your in, he said, slinging his arm around my shoulders. Now's your chance to prove yourself. That's the problem, I said. I don't know how. Oops. My mother stroked my knuckles with her thumb. You'll figure it out. Keep your eyes and ears open and you'll come up with something. As comforting as her reassurance should have been, she was forgetting one thing. Cronus could see me, and now that he didn't trust me, I didn't stand a chance at getting any more information out of him. Every day for the last 3 weeks of October, I drove into my visions with the hope of finding even the smallest of clues that could help with the council's defense. My efforts were mostly wasted, though. Calliope spent most of her time alone, staring at a holographic image of the island, and whatever strategizing she and Cronus did was a mystery to me. They were rarely in the same room together, and whenever Cronus did appear somewhere near Calliope, she was quick to find an excuse to leave. At first I thought she was angry with the short way she spoke to him. The more I saw them together, however, the more I noticed other things, the way her posture slipped when he was near, the way her voice and focus wavered. She wasn't angry, she was terrified of him. I didn't blame her, without anyone to curb his ambition and determination. Cronus grew more powerful every day until not even his human form seemed able to hold it. He crackled around the edges, and everywhere he stepped he left black footprints in his wake. Though he saw me, he never acknowledged me. I preferred it that way. I reported back to the council everything until finally Dylan said exactly what I feared. He's growing more powerful than we ever expected. Our barriers won't hold until solstice. No one in the council questioned him. They all knew we were running out of time, and without more information they were stumbling around blind. They'd guessed the routes Cronus would take to New York, the way he might hammer destruction onto the city that he'd raised me. They had a plan for each. They were woefully outnumbered, though, and nothing Ella or Theo said to the minor gods. They chased across the world, brought reinforcements. James often joined them, helping find the ones hiding from Walter's wrath, leaving me alone with my mother and a handful of gods stretched to the limit. I kept to myself, and soon my visions weren't just spy missions. They were another way to avoid the council as well. No matter how often I saw Henry in Calliope's palace, he never again revealed he knew I was there. The more time that passed, the more I doubted that moment in the nursery, and the more time Henry spent with Calliope, the more he seemed to sink into her spell. Any hint of his defiance was gone. He did whatever she said, but Milo was always with him, and I clung to that with everything I had. He was in there somewhere, and I thought it would be a battle for him to break free when the time came. He stood a chance. In the beginning of November, as Henry rocked Milo to sleep for an afternoon nap, Calliope hurried into the nursery. Something's wrong with Cronus. Instead of putting Milo in the cradle, Henry gathered him up and followed Calliope. I hurried after them, and through the windows I saw a storm brewing over the island. Black clouds swirled amid this warm ocean air, blotting out the blue sky, and thunder rolled across the sea, a warning of the danger to come. Calliope ran up the steps and through a weathered door that opened onto the roof. Henry held Milo close against the strong winds, but despite Milo's cries, he didn't go back inside. The moment I spotted Cronus in the middle of the roof, I understood. This storm wasn't natural. His form could no longer hold him, and Cronus was now nothing more than a glowing orb of power, crackling with more lightning than anything natural could ever produce. Cronus's opaque fog swirled in the eye of the storm with a black funnel expanding upward into the sky, a warning, a message, a command. Come and fight. I instinctively reached for Henry. Instead of mirroring the fear Calliope wore so openly, his mouth was set in a grim line, and determination furrowed his brow. Whatever was coming, he was ready for it. Go, he said, and he turned to look me straight in the eye. I love you. Warn the others it has begun. I opened and shut my mouth twice. What about you and Milo? I'll make sure he's safe. Just go. Through the howling wind, I reached for him, my fingertips half an inch from his cheek. I love you too. Don't forget who you are. Despite the swirling black mass of death not 20 feet away, Henry managed to smile. I should say the same to you. Be brave and do what you must. My eyes burned in the wind, but as I faded from the rooftop, I couldn't tear my gaze away from him. Please don't do anything stupid. Before he could answer, the brewing storm melted away, replaced by my bedroom at Olympus. I ran down the hallway, momentarily forgetting my ability to be wherever I had to be, whenever I needed to be there. I needed to run. I needed to scream, but I had no voice left for anything other than the words I'd been dreading. Bursting into the throne room, I dashed into the center of the circle, ignoring the silence of broken conversation. Whatever the council had been discussing, it didn't matter now. It's Cronus, I said breathlessly. He's escaping. There's a storm around the island, and we already know, said Dylan, and I shook my head. He didn't understand. The final battle, it's begun. Chapter 16, The Last Hour. Walter had to shout 4 times and crack a bolt of lightning before the council came to order. Everyone was on their feet, including my mother, and the energy in the room jolted between nervous and aggressive. We had been preparing for this moment for a year, said Walter once the dim faded. We may no longer have the allies we relied upon, but we have each other, and together we are strong. No one said a word. Even Dylan couldn't muster up a battle cry. This would either be the day they finally sent Cronus back to Tartarus, or it would be the day the council fell. By this time tomorrow, I would either have a family or I'd be alone, subject to Cronus's whims and darkest pleasures. I would have rather slit my throat than with that dagger myself. We are prepared, we are together, and we will fight until we win or are no more, continued Walter. Take an hour to do whatever you must, and we will meet back here then. One by one the council filtered out, some in pairs, others by themselves. At a loss, I stayed put. What was I supposed to do? It had been hard enough watching them all go to war the last winter solstice, but this time it would be the greatest battle the world had seen since the First Titan War, and my entire family would be front and center. I want to fight, I said once the room had emptied of everyone except my mother and James. You said I could. Oh, honey, she pulled me from my seat into a hug. You have fought in the ways that rest of us couldn't. Fighting doesn't always mean going to battle with a sword and shield. You've done more than enough, and now it's time for you to stay safe, for Milo's sake. Milo's exactly the reason I need to fight. I know I'm not strong enough to give you any real support, but maybe I could distract Cronus or Calliope or something, anything. Her arms tightened around me, and she buried her face in the crook of my neck, her cheek warm against my skin. I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to memorize this moment. She had to come back, and if she didn't, no, I couldn't think like that. They'd survived the battle so far, and they'd survived this one too. My mother would not die today. No one would. Come, she murmured. We haven't got much time, and there's something I'd like to do before then. James? James stepped up and touched our shoulders. This won't be fun, he said, and before I could ask where we were going, the room exploded with light as we fell into the earth. My eyes watered. Going from Olympus to the surface wasn't anything new. Why James had felt the need to warn me, I didn't know until the blue sky had disappeared, replaced by rock. I would have thrown up if I could have, even with my mother at my side. The oppressive layers of the earth pressed down on me, making my heart flutter with panic as we sped downward. I tried to force my eyes to close, but they were glued open with terror. The best I could do was hug my mother tightly and hope that it would be over soon. At last we landed in the rock cavern outside Henry's obsidian palace. My knees knocked together and all the blood rushed from my head, making the walls spin. I punched James in the arm as hard as I could, not like it had hurt him. Why do you keep doing that to me? He grinned. Because the look on your face is priceless. Honestly, Kate, what do you think I'm going to do? Leave you in the rock? I shuddered. You wouldn't. I wouldn't. I couldn't, he corrected. Once you learn how to use the portals, you won't be able to either. I opened my mouth to retort, but the murmur of low voices caught my attention, and I turned toward the palace. In the shadows, a crowd had formed, swarming the garden and the river on the other side of the cavern. What's that? Who are they? The dead, said James. The lost souls, the ones who need guidance. No one's here to help, so they're stuck until you and Henry return. I stared. There had to be thousands of them. I'd expected some, knowing that Henry wasn't down here to help, but not this. Of course there were so many, though. With the numbers Cronus had slaughtered, I should have been surprised there weren't more. We need help. We need to help them. Not right now, sweetheart, said my mother, rubbing my back. They have eternity. We have somewhere to be. And where's that? I said. We're going to visit your sister, she said. And all of my indignation melted away. She'd gone ages without seeing Persephone before facing her the year before. Another visit so soon could only mean one thing. She was saying her goodbyes. Mom, I choked out, my voice cracking. You can't leave me, you promised. Whoever said anything about leaving you, sweetheart, she said, brushing my hair from my eyes. We both knew the truth, though. No matter how many pep talks Walter gave, no matter how often she reassured me that she wasn't going anywhere, she knew it was a possibility, and this time there would be no miraculous return. I clutched her hand. We could stay down here while the others fight. They won't miss you, and we can come up with another way to help them. She gave me a sad smile. Honey, you know the council needs everyone they can get right now. I have a responsibility to them, and I can't walk away. What about your responsibility to me? My cheeks grew warm as my eyes burned with tears. You promised you'd never leave me again. I'm not. I'm fighting for what I believe in, she said. I've no intentions of dying today, Kate. But you could. Yes, I could, she allowed. As Walter said, Cronus is a formidable enemy, and there's little we can do to combat him directly. However, you must remember we have thousands upon thousands of years of experience behind us, and we will put every last second of that to good use. I will do everything in my considerable power to make sure I come back to you, to make sure we all do. She could promise me the moon, but she was choosing to forget one very important fact. Cronus wasn't beatable. Considerable power or not, there was nothing in the council's arsenal that could take him on and win. Together they had a chance, but without Henry, without Calliope, they might as well have surrendered. They'd have a lot longer life expectancy that way. There had to be something. The dagger, the weapon, scattered around Nicholas's torture chamber. Those were advantages that could be ours, but how? Now come, murmured my mother. Take us to see your sister. I would have delayed if I had thought it might work, but if my mother did die today, I couldn't live with the guilt of denying her last request to see her other daughter, and Persephone deserved the chance to say goodbye too. I held my free hand out for James, and he took it without a word. For all the wisecracks that came from that big mouth of his, he knew when to keep it shut, too, if he didn't make it either. No one would die today, not my mother, not James, not Henry, no one. After one last look at the dead surrounding the palace, I closed my eyes. A warm breeze tickled my neck, and when I opened them, we were standing in the middle of a field of flowers. Not 10 feet away stood a cottage covered in vines, and even though we were in the underworld, the sun, or at least Persephone's version of the sun, shone brightly down on us. Hey, cried Persephone. I turned in time to see her blonde curls bouncing in the wind. Get out of there. What? I started, and then I looked down. We were standing right in the middle of my sister's tulips. Oops. My mother chuckled and then took a step away from me, and I moved with her, refusing to leave her side. I'm sorry, darling. Kate's rather new to this particular method of transportation. Persephone stormed toward us, her feet automatically avoiding the patches of flowers, as if she knew exactly where every blossom was. After spending 1,000 years in this field, she probably did. That's no excuse for trampling my tulips, she grumbled. I'm sorry, despite the reason we were here. The look on her face made me smirk. Persephone wasn't my favorite person, not by a long shot, and having the chance to stick it to her was a small victory during an otherwise awful day. Next time I'll try to aim for the path. You'd better. She knelt down next to the flower bed and touched the crushed tulips. Why are you here? I go centuries without having to deal with guests, and now you decide to visit me twice in a year? Are you really that desperate for marital advice? I blinked. What? No, of course not. If he's going through one of his spats, just leave him alone, and don't bother him until it's over, said Persephone. He'll come to you then. That's not why we're here, said my mother, and she knelt beside my sister and touched the tulips. They glowed golden in the sunlight, and slowly they straightened back into perfect condition. There, all fixed. I didn't need your help, muttered Persephone, sitting back on her heels. What I need is for your people to not step on my flowers in the first place. I opened my mouth to tell her exactly where she could shove her flowers, but James beat me to it. For the love of whatever you hold holy, Persephone, would you please shut up for 2 seconds and let us talk? The three of us stared at him, and he squared his shoulders, clearly doing his best to look respectful and godly, but with his mop of blonde hair and ears that stuck out like a caricature, he looked about as godly as Mickey Mouse. Fine, what's going on? Said Persephone, and though the edge remained in her voice, her expression softened. Cronus is about to break free from the island, said my mother. The battle will begin within the hour, and I hoped you might be willing to look after Kate until it's over. My mouth and Persephone's dropped open simultaneously. You're leaving me here? I cried. You're making me babysit? Said Persephone in an equally horrified voice. My mother focused on me first. Kate, darling, I know you want to help, but you will help the most by remaining safe so I do not have to worry about your well-being. But, I started, and though she held up her hand, I kept going. Mom, please, you can't keep coddling me like this. You know you do not have the ability to fight in a way that will be helpful to the rest of us, my mother said bluntly. That's not my fault, I said. You're the one who promised to train me. I could have learned. Not in less than 2 months. We were all stretched to our limits already, and even if we had, you aren't one of the original 6. You simply are not powerful enough to help change the course of battle fighting head on like that. She touched my cheek. Please allow us our greatest chance of success. Remain safe. I dug my nails into the palms of my hands. You can't make me stay here. I know, but I trust you to make the right decisions. Milo needs a mother, and he can't have that if you're gone. When the time comes, he's going to need you, and you're going to need him. So you want me to just hide my head in sand until it's over? I said thickly. How can you say that? You're the one who showed me how to be a fighter in the first place. She gathered me up, and I melted into her embrace. Sometimes fighting means surviving the face of insurmountable odds. That's what I need you to do. Be the survivor. I know you are. I hiccuped into her shoulder, and my fingers tightened around her sleeve. Please stay with me. If I could, I would. There's nowhere else I'd rather be than here with the two of you. Holding her arm out for Persephone, she waited. Finally, my sister accepted the hug. First time you come to see me in hundreds of years, and you want me to babysit, she muttered, and my mother kissed her forehead. I'm sorry, darling. I'll make sure to visit more often. That wasn't a promise she could keep if she were dead, and Persephone flinched right along with me. Was this the last time we'd be together like this? It couldn't be. I wouldn't let it. There had to be something. I'll promise to stay here with Persephone if you promise not to risk your life, I said. It wasn't much, but until I could come up with a solid plan, they would have to do. Oh, Kate, my mother kissed my hair. You might as well ask me to not go at all. I haven't let Cronus get the best of me yet, and I don't intend on starting now. That I swear to you. Have a little faith. Easy for her to say. She was the one running off to fight. I love you, I mumbled. How many more times would we say these endless goodbyes before it really would be the last time? I love you too. Remember Milo. She pulled away and looked me straight in the eye. Can you do that for me? I nodded, a heavy numbness settling over me as she turned to say goodbye to Persephone. Instead of embraces and tears, they bent their heads together and began to whisper, Let me go with you, and Persephone, Cronus, and Calliope can't hurt me, and I could be useful. My mother shook her head. I need you here with Kate, to make sure she doesn't do anything stupid. Persephone rolled her eyes. Of course she's going to do something stupid. She's Kate. I'm counting on you not to let that happen. After one quick squeeze of her hand and my mother's admonishment to be good, their goodbyes were over. Persephone's eyes were dry. How could this be so easy for her? James touched my shoulder, and I spun around to hug him. If you die, I will be so peeved at you, I said. Then let's hope that doesn't happen. If you wander into battle, I'm going to be so peeved at you, said James. Then let's hope that doesn't happen, I mimicked. Do you need a lift to Olympus? He snorted. Nice try, your mother's got it covered. Hesitating, he pressed his lips to the corner of my mouth, and almost kissed full of questions I couldn't answer and promises neither of us could keep. Don't forget, I get to be your first affair, and I'm holding you to that. You'd better, I said, and with that he let me go for one last hug with my mother. The knot in my throat grew unbearable, but I refused to cry. I didn't want the last moments we had to be full of blubbering sobs. Neither she nor James said anything. They smiled, no trace of fear or anxiety or either of their ageless faces, and James offered my mother his arm. She took it wordlessly, and together they faded until there was nothing left but the breeze. Come on, let's get you some tea before you fall over, said Persephone. She took my elbow, and I didn't argue. If Cronus slaughtered everyone I loved, Persephone would be the only family I had left. Not exactly a satisfying consolation prize, but I didn't want to give her any reason to hate me. As much as I wanted to reassure myself that it wouldn't come to it just being the two of us, I couldn't. It wasn't up to me, and I couldn't change the outcome of the battle through sheer willpower and thought alone. I could do something to help, though, if I could only think of something that would be worth the risk. Something Persephone had said stayed in the back of my mind, but before I could concentrate fully on it, she pushed the door open. Adonis! What did I say about feeding the dog peanut butter? Adonis, Persephone's boyfriend, husband, rose from the floor, and I gaped at the puppy at his feet. Pogo! I knelt down, and the black and white dog Henry had given me let out a bark muffled by a mouthful of homemade peanut butter. Tripping all over himself, he scampered across the cottage and jumped into my arms, one lick in the cheek, and I could no longer hold back the floodgates. Persephone stepped around me as I clung to Pogo and cried. She could give me all the nasty looks she wanted. She'd abandoned her family an eon ago. I'd barely started to get to know mine. By the time my sobs ended, she had a mug of tea waiting for me on the tiny kitchen table. She sat in the chair opposite mine, and Adonis lingered nearby, leaning against the wall and shuffling his feet. While I sipped my tea with Pogo in my lap, neither of them said anything. Several minutes passed, and I couldn't take the silence any more. Aren't you afraid of what's going to happen? I said, my voice rough after my crying fit. Persephone shrugged. They've been at war with the Titans before, but it's different this time. They don't have Calliope and Henry. What about Henry? What's wrong with him? With a sigh, I launched into everything that had happened since she left the palace after the first battle. Calliope's plot to kidnap me, the 9 months I'd spent as her prisoner, Milo, my connection with Cronus, what I'd promised him, what he'd promised in return, the attacks on Athens and Egypt, Henry's fight for survival, his sacrifice to keep Milo and me safe, everything. And now they're going into the biggest battle in history, down to of their strongest fighters with no real hope of success. I cuddled Pogo, and he licked the crook of my arm. Persephone drummed her fingers against the wooden table, her expression distant. And you're going to spend the entire time here, not even trying to help them? The only thing I could possibly do is distract Cronus and Calliope, and you heard Mom. She doesn't want that. If I were you, I'd be fighting like H to keep everything good I had in my life, said Persephone. Not all of us had that chance. The relationship you have with Mother and Henry, you two made me an aunt, and you're sitting here like a lump instead of doing everything you can to get them back. You think I want to sit here? If there was something I could do to help, I'd be doing it, but I can't. Like H, you can't. She narrowed her eyes. Think, Kate. Just stop and think. You're the girl who trekked across half the underworld to reach me on the off chance I might know where to find Cronus, and you're giving up right now? I don't think so. Were she and James conspiring to make me feel like an utter failure? I opened my mouth to protest again, but she held up her hand. There's always a way around a problem, and you have half an hour to figure it out before the battle begins. So you tell me, Kate, after everything you've been through and everything you've seen, are you going to sit here, or are you going to fight? I took a deep breath. Persephone was right. There was always a solution. There was always a way to fix something, even if it was hard, even if it was nearly impossible. Anything is possible if you give it a chance. Henry's voice. Henry's words. He believed in me, even though I'd long since given up believing in myself. Think, the weapons, Cronus's bargain, the layout of the palace, Nicholas, Persephone. My eyes flew open, and the pieces of the puzzle snapped into place. I know what to do, she grinned. It's about time. Chapter 7, Final Stand. We arrived arm in arm in the middle of Persephone's forest. The moment the ground underneath our feet shifted, she let go of me, but I didn't care. For the first time in ages, I knew exactly what I was doing. Grabbing her hand, I dragged Persephone through the trees toward a red-headed girl surrounded by the tamest animals I'd ever seen. A baby deer rested beside her. A singing robin settled on her shoulder, and in her lap she cuddled a litter of buddies no bigger than my fist. Persephone squinted. Who is that? Just let me do the talking, I said, and once we drew close enough, I called out, Hi, Ingrid. Ingrid, you mean the first girl too stupid to figure out how to live? Said Persephone, and I elbowed her in the side. Kate! Ingrid's squeal echoed, making the rock wall at the edge of her afterlife obvious. You really came. I thought you were just trying to be nice, but you're really here. Yeah, I'm really here, as I knelt beside her to pet the tame fawn. Persephone's forest melted into Ingrid's meadow of candy flowers. Unfortunately, it's not for catching up. Ingrid's face fell before she could get too upset. Persephone spoke up behind me. You wouldn't happen to know how to handle a knife, would you? She tugged nervously on a lock of hair. Why? Because Cronus is about to destroy the world, and the council doesn't have much of a chance against him, I said. They need help. The dead are the only people Calliope and Cronus can't hurt, and they've got a whole room full of weapons that could take them down, or at least Calliope. If this didn't work on Cronus, it was worth a shot. It was our only shot. And you want me to help you? Said Ingrid. We want all of the girls to help us, I said. Persephone doesn't know who they are, but we were hoping you might. Ingrid set the bunnies down and stood, brushing dirt off the white dress that must have been the height of casual fashion back in the 1920s. As it happens, not only do I know who they are, but while Henry was trying to figure out who was behind the murderers, he even let me meet them. It's a bit of a walk, but I can take you there. At last, some luck. We don't have time to go on foot. The battle's about to start, I said. I've got a faster way, though. With Ingrid's help, we gathered up 8 of the other 10 girls. 2 of them hadn't been in the sections of the underworld Henry had allotted for them, and we were running out of time. 8 would have to do for now. I stood before them, shuffling my feet nervously, because Ingrid lingered by my side. I saw the meadow in front of me, but every time one of the other girls edged closer, the background shifted into their afterlives instead. Forests, a white sand beach, an empty theme park. It was bizarre, but I forced myself to ignore it. As long as the other girls could see me and each other, that was all that mattered. I'm Kate, I said, Henry's wife. The word felt strange on my tongue, but it got an immediate reaction from the girls. A whisper rippled through the group, and the ones in the back jostled for a better position. That's impossible. You actually passed the test, said the girl with the curly auburn hair. Like survived and everything? I held my tongue. Of course they thought it was crazy. Calliope had killed each and every one of them. After a while, even Henry thought it would be impossible for anyone to make it. Barely, I said. I got lucky. I can't believe it was Calliope, said the same girl. She stabbed me in the back and threw me in the river. I thought it was James. Yeah, well, turns out you aren't so smart after all, Anna, said a dark-haired girl on the other side of the group. The top of her head barely reached my chin. The first girl, Anna, snorted. Like you're any better, Amiee. Insisted Ava was behind it. She slept with every other god, said Amiee. Don't see why she wouldn't go after Henry, too. That's enough, said Persephone. Let Kate speak. For the 3rd time in an hour, I explained everything that was happening. No one interrupted me. The battle's about to start, and our numbers are dwindling, I added at the end. I wouldn't ask this of any of you if we weren't desperate, but we are. We need fighters. I don't know how to fight, said Amiee. And the other girls murmured in agreement. Anna, however, cracked her knuckles and stepped forward. The background shifted into a garden that put Versailles to shame. A chance for a stab at Calliope? Count me in. 1 down, 7 to go. I can get us into the castle undetected, I said. Calliope and Cronus can't hurt you. Are you sure? Piped a voice from the back. Don't be an idiot, Bethany, said Anna. Of course she's sure. I am, I said quickly. I swear if you do this, you won't be in danger. It's true, said Persephone. I faced off against Cronus and Calliope a year ago. They tried their best, but I'm still here, and I'll scratch on me. Another murmur rippled through the group. You're sure the weapons will work too, said Amiee. I hesitated. No, I wasn't sure. Even if one of us managed to take out Calliope, I had no idea if this would work on Cronus. And what if they weren't corporeal on the surface? What if they were ghosts like I was in my visions? We have to try, I said. If nothing else, we need to distract them long enough to get Henry out there. We need him on our side. The council is heavily outgunned, and if we don't find a way to help, they will fall. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually Cronus will get the best of us, I added, and Henry will die with them. Silence. I shifted my focus from one face to the next, searching for any sign that they would agree, but none of them met my eye. Before I could give convincing them one last shot, however, Bethany called from the back, Count me in. Me too, said Amiee, and one by one the others also volunteered. Thank you, I said. I can't tell you what this means to crash. The earth around us trembled, and several of the girls shrieked. Ingrid clutched my arm, and we all looked up to the sky above us. Most souls had no idea where they were, and thought their afterlife was the real thing, but Henry's girls knew the difference. They knew that the sun's warmth was an illusion, and beyond the fluffy clouds was the ceiling of an enormous cavern, and that was why they were the only ones who could help us. The trembling subsided, but it didn't matter. The battle raged above us, and we didn't have any time to waste. I need a whiteboard and a marker, I said, and several of them stared at me blankly. A blackboard is a piece of chalk thin. 9 of them appeared around me. Illusion or not being dead had its advantages. I sketched the layout of Calliope's castle as best I could, marking each important location: Nicholas's cell, the nursery, Calliope's room, as accurately as I could. In 3 minutes we had a plan. Whether it worked or not, at least I would give the others a chance. Getting them up to the surface would be tricky, but the gaping hole in the cavern where Cronus had escaped the first time was still there. He was trapped on the island, but I tested the exit twice. I could get in and out without any trouble. You first, I said to Persephone. She looked at my offered hand like it was made of acid. How can I possibly be sure you know how to control it? You trampled my tulips. I rolled my eyes and grabbed her wrist. The underworld dissolved, replaced by the stark white walls of my room in Calliope's castle. Happy now? Stay here. Persephone glared at me, but I disappeared before she could insult me further. I took 2 girls at once, and within a minute we all clustered together in the room. The girls fidgeted, and more than a few pairs of eyes widened in terror as a tidal wave crashed against the cliffs protecting the castle. Just stick to the plan, I said, and whatever you do, don't forget that no one can hurt you. Not Calliope, not Cronus, no one. Can they hurt you? Piped Amy's voice. If we do this, I'll be fine, I lied. No one could promise anyone anything. They needed to hear it, and it was my job to tell them the truth right now. We don't have any more time. Trust me. Trust yourselves. I pushed the door open and sneaked into the hallway, followed by several pairs of hesitant footsteps. I didn't look back to make sure everyone was following us. They had come. The best I could hope for now was that their courage didn't fail them. The hallway between my room and Nicholas's was suspiciously empty. Did Calliope believe that no one could break into the castle, or did she foolishly not care? I crept forward, prepared for any sort of traps she or Cronus might have set, but we made it to Nicholas's room without interruption. The door, however, was locked. I have to go in there and get the weapons myself, I said, but Amiee elbowed her way through the group of girls. Let me. Pulling a pin from her hair, she knelt beside the doorknob. I listened for any sign someone was coming. But 5 seconds later, the lock clicked open. Piece of cake, Amiee said with a grin, and I shot her a grateful smile. Pushing the door open, I burst into the room, fully expecting Calliope to be waiting for me. Instead, Nicholas sat chained to the chair, surrounded by his workshop of weapons. Kate, he said, squinting through 2 black eyes. Blood dripped down the side of his face from a nasty gash on his forehead. Calliope must have been here recently. Persephone? Hello to you, too, brother, said Persephone. Behind her, the others poured into the workshop, their eyes widening at the sight of Nicholas and the array of weapons. I knelt beside his chair and inspected the glowing chains. I can't touch them, I said apologetically. I know, he said. Don't worry about me. Go and get Cronus. I'm not leaving you behind. Amiee, can you undo this lock? Amiee separated the others and joined me, but Persephone hot on her heels. That's more complicated, she said, but I think I can do it. Try. She'll get it, said Persephone. Go ahead without us. We'll get Nicholas out of here. Thanks, I said, and Persephone waved off my gratitude. They're my family, too. Now go. A clash of metal against metal shook the air around us, and the other girls quieted. I took a deep breath. Time to be a leader. You all know what you're supposed to do, I said, with as much confidence as I could muster. Grab a weapon infused with fog, and go give them. Anna let out a whoop, and clutching a mace, she streaked out of the room and up the narrow staircase that led to the rest of the castle. One by one, the other girls followed, clutching swords and staffs and other weapons I couldn't identify. I waited by the door until their cries diminished. The chances of them succeeding were slim, but as long as their distraction gave me enough time to rescue Milo and Henry, then at least our efforts wouldn't be wasted. Seems like they're enjoying themselves, said Nicholas heavily. He grinned. Several of his teeth were missing. Get that lock undone. I want to join them. Yeah, right, I said, and I swiped a glowing life with the wicked, hooked teeth from the remaining weapons. You're lucky to be alive. Persephone gave me a look. He has a right to fight for his family, just like you do. Now stop dictating and go get your son. Biting back a response, I nodded, and a second later Milo's nursery replaced the workshop around me. Thunder echoed through the air. The council had to be close. Milo, I gasped, rushing toward the cradle. It was empty. Of course Henry wouldn't let him out of his sight during the battle, but something inside me withered. I'd hoped to get Milo out of there and safe without illness before fighting Henry, but that clearly wasn't going to happen. I turned to leave on foot, but instead I crashed face first into a warm body and stumbled to the ground. My heart near stopped. Had Calliope expected this? Was she lying here in wait while Cronus distracted everyone else? I gripped the knife with hooked teeth, fully prepared to use it. Kate? Not Calliope. Ava. Where is he? I said, scrambling to my feet. She blocked my way out, her cheeks pale and her eyes round. Clearly she hadn't expected me. Good. That meant Calliope likely didn't either. Milo, she said, he's with Henry. And where exactly is that? Ava bit her lip. I can't tell you. Calliope will kill you. Not if I get them away from her before she knows I'm there, I said, unless you decide to tell her. What? Of course I wouldn't, she said, stunned. I'm on your side. Then tell me where Henry and Milo are. She swallowed, her eyes red and shining with tears. She'll kill all of us. Me, you, Henry, Milo, Nicholas. Persephone and Amiee are getting him out of here as we speak, I said. He'll be fine. Amiee, you mean Henry's? It's a long story. Ava hesitated, and at last her expression hardened. Come on, I'll take you there. Alarm bells went off in the back of my mind. Why should I trust you? Because we were friends once, she said, and because I'd want someone to help me protect my son if our positions were reversed. Right, she'd mentioned her son before, and while I believed her, it seemed awfully convenient that she'd bring him up now. You never told me about him. Eternity's a long time to cover between classes, she said. His name's Eros. Eric now, I suppose. Are you coming? Searching the entire castle room by room would take too long, and for all I knew, Henry and Milo were bunkered down in a place I'd never be able to find in my own. So before I gave myself time to consider it, I nodded. We ran through the hallways, and I tried to ignore the rolling black clouds through the windows and the bone-shattering crash of water against rock. The council was getting closer. Maybe we'd have a chance after all. Where are they? I shouted over the roar, and Ava dashed up the staircase, pulling me along with her. The hooked knife nearly slipped from my grip, but I hugged it to my chest. I couldn't lose it. On the rooftop with Calliope and Cronus, said Ava. My heart sank. Persephone was supposed to cover that area, but she was undoubtedly still with Nicholas. If none of the other girls had made it up there yet after clearing their sections of the castle, we would be on our own. It didn't matter. Milo and Henry were on that roof, and I would have gone up there as naked as a mortal as the day I was born, as if it meant having a chance to save them. I followed Ava without question. She could have been leading me straight to my death, but I desperately wanted to believe that the Ava I knew and loved was in there somewhere, willing to give all and risk her life for the greater good. She wouldn't have led me astray, and I had to believe that this Ava wouldn't either. The door to the roof appeared, and I took a breath. I would know soon enough, one way or the other. Chapter 18, Bloodshed. We burst into the open air, the afternoon sky blacker than night. The cyclone that had been Cronus was gone, spread across the sky and struggling against pinpricks of light that looked like stars. The council. I ducked my head. If my mother saw me and got distracted, that had to be a risk I was willing to take. My mother was strong. She wouldn't let Cronus get the best of her. If I had any chance of getting through this, I couldn't doubt her. I couldn't doubt myself. Calliope stood at the edge of the roof, her hair whipping in the wind, and her head tilted upward toward the heart of the battle. Henry stood at her side, his arms shielding a bundle of white blankets from grains of sand that cut through the air like bullets. What was he doing, bringing Milo up here? I shoved aside my protest. Milo was immortal, and there was nowhere safer for him than with Henry. I couldn't get distracted. Calliope, I cried. My voice was nearly lost to the wind, but she faced me, her eyebrows raised in surprise. So you really are as stupid as I thought you were, she said as she walked toward me, leaving Henry and Milo behind. Come to die? Not quite. I gripped the hooked knife. It had to be as good as her dagger. Let Henry and Milo go. This is between you and me. Calliope's eyes widened innocently. Henry's free to leave whenever he wants. It's not my fault he chose me over you. My blood boiled. How does it feel to know that your reality is nothing more than a fantasy you've concocted and blackmailed your way into? Nobody loves you. Not your husband, not your children, not your brothers or your sisters. No one. The air around her crackled angrily. Do you think I care? I win, Kate. I have everything you've ever wanted, and soon everyone else you love, is going to be dead. You're going to spend eternity alone, and no one's going to be there to save you anymore. It isn't about winning. I took a step toward her. Even if you never let Henry go, somewhere inside him he's always going to love me because he wants to, because we're good together, not because Ava forced him into it. And no matter how alone I am, I'll always have the comfort of knowing that at least someone in the world loves me because they want to. But you're nothing but a heinous, lonely, unloved, and that's all you're ever going to be. Calliope screeched and barreled toward me. In the few seconds we had, Ava tried to push me behind her, but I sidestepped her and sprinted toward Calliope, clutching the hooked knife. I had one chance, and I was well going to take it. We collided, immortal against immortal, and the force of it nearly sent me flying. Her nails scratched my face, her shrieks of rage rang in my ears. But her hands were empty. Mine weren't. I'm going to beat your pretty face to a pulp, growled Calliope. Once I'm done, I'm going to make your son watch as I scoop your eyes out and peel your skin from your body, and maybe, once you're nothing more than a lump of quivering flesh, I might let you. Her eyes widened, her words cut short as I sank the hooked knife into her side. You might what? I said. You might let me die? Calliope fell off me, her brow furrowed in confusion. She stared at the knife sticking out of her side. How did you get the weapons Nicholas forged? I said. You're not the only one with brains, you know. She tugged on the knife, wincing as the hook ripped her skin apart, doing more damage going out than it had done going in. Blood soaked through her pale blue dress, and she dropped the blade on the ground with a clatter, but her eyes went blank, and without another word she collapsed. I stared at her body, and the way my hands shook had nothing to do with the bitter wind. After 2.5 years of struggling to stay alive in her wake, that was it. I'd done it. It felt too easy. I kicked her body to be sure, but when she plopped like a dead fish, I staggered backwards. I'd killed her. I'd really, truly killed her. I was a murderer. It was justified, but she hadn't had her dagger. I could have given her a choice, and instead I'd killed her in cold blood. How did that make me better than her? I wasn't. Not anymore. Clenching my jaw, I turned away. I'd have time to hate myself later. Calliope might have been dead, but the whirling cloud of doom overhead hadn't stopped. Henry, I cried. Abandoning Calliope's body, I dashed toward him through the violent gusts. You need to take Milo and get out of here. He stared up at the sky, and at first I thought he hadn't heard me. As I opened my mouth to repeat myself, however, he turned toward me, his moonlight eyes glowing. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of something behind him, but it vanished. Leave, Kate, he said, his voice sounding like 1,000 gods speaking all at the same time. I gaped at him in horror. Are you helping, Cronus? You weren't supposed to come. Yeah? When has that ever stopped me? I reached for Milo. If you won't take him to safety, then I will. He snatched the baby away from me, and a knot formed in my throat. This couldn't be happening. Henry should have been in there somewhere, waiting for this, waiting for the moment he could finally break free. But I only saw the blank face of a powerful deity, not Henry, not my family. Ava, whatever you're doing to Henry, stop it, I shouted over the deafening roar. No response. I looked over my shoulder. Ava stared at me, her mouth hanging slack-jawed and her eyes wide with fear, and it took me a moment to figure out why. Calliope's body was gone. A girlish giggle echoed through the storm, mingling with the screeching wind, the crash of waves rising higher and higher. I froze. How was it possible I'd watched her die? Funny thing about those weapons, said Calliope, and I whirled around again. She stood beside Henry, her arm wrapped around her shoulders, his arm wrapped around her shoulders the way he always held me. Her dagger floated in the space between us. They were discarded because they didn't work. Behind me, someone screamed, and the glowing blade hurtled toward me. I scrambled backward, pivoting in hopes it would fly past me, but it followed my movements without missing a beat. My back hit something solid, the edge of the roof. The dagger pressed against my throat, and I leaned back as far as I could without falling. Henry, I choked, please. Don't listen to her, Henry, said Calliope in a sickly sweet voice. She's the enemy, remember? You're loyal to me. Only because she's using her powers against you, I gulped in the gritty air. Come on, Henry, you're stronger than this. Yeah, Henry, called out a voice from the other end of the roof, Persephone. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched as the other girls joined her. I thought you were better than this. Persephone? Henry frowned. What are you? Don't listen to her, said Calliope. You've got me now. Henry shook her off, and he stepped toward Persephone and the gang of girls. What are you all doing here? Rescuing you, said Anna, swinging her mace, and taking down this. She let out a war cry, and the girls took off across the roof, heading straight for Calliope and Henry and Milo. Stop, I shrieked. My cries fell on deaf ears, though, and they only sped up. Henry, get out of here. Take Milo and go. He ignored me and stared at the girls as if he'd never seen anything so strange in his life beside him. Calliope waved her hand, and the dagger flew from my neck to settle directly above my heart. The tip of the blade dug into my skin, and I winced as a drop of blood soaked into my shirt. Please, I begged, just go. The sound of twisting metal drowned out my pleas, and half a dozen bewildered voices rose above the commotion. Though he was fighting a battle far above us, the fog that was Cronus had created a barrier in front of Calliope, protecting her. Persephone and the other girls pushed against it, roaring with outrage. The weapons struck the fog again and again to no avail. Around, commanded Persephone, and the others scattered. No matter where they moved, though, they couldn't get any closer. Calliope smirked. Here's the deal, Henry. She set her hand on his arm, and he flinched away. Was he back now? Had he come to his senses? You're going to send all of these pretty little nuisances back where they came from, and maybe I won't kill Kate. The blade dug into my chest, widening the wound, and I gasped as the fire of a titan spread through me. Henry tensed, but as soon as it had come, his fear was replaced with the mask of impassiveness he wore when he was hurting the most. He was there. Did Calliope know? Had she let him go on purpose? What will it be, Henry? She said. I wouldn't linger too long on the options if I were you. Deeper now, through the cartilage and bone, until it was half a millimeter away from piercing my heart. Light exploded in front of me, and sweat poured down my face as the fog spread through me, securing a chokehold on what remained of my life. I'm sorry. Henry waved his hand, and Persephone and the others disappeared, their useless weapons falling on the ground in a clatter. Blood trickled down my chest now, and I couldn't look away from Henry. It didn't matter that Calliope had severed his loyalty to me. She hadn't severed mine. Do it, I snarled, summoning the last of my strength. Martyr complex or not, maybe this would be enough for Henry to bring Milo to safety. I dare you. A shriek pierced the howling wind. Nicholas came through the roof door, and Ava pounced on him, kissing his purple cheeks and capturing him in an embrace. Even if no other part of my plan had worked, at least we'd freed Nicholas. At least we gave Ava a reason to fight with us. How cute, said Calliope. A reunion before Cronus sends you all to oblivion. Nicholas straightened and held Ava protectively. You're never going to win, he said. Cronus could kill us all, and you would still only be second. Calliope growled, and immediately I saw the effect his words had on her. Her fists tightened, her jaw clenched, her cheeks flushed in her distraction. The dagger slipped from my chest. Eyeing the blade, I shifted slowly to the side, hoping against hope she wouldn't notice. Being my son will only buy you so much lenience, she said. Is this how you want to spend it? Lenience? Is that what you call what you did to him? Ava shrugged off Nicholas's arm and stormed towards Calliope. Without her, Nicholas sagged and collapsed against the wall, his legs shaking so badly that it was a wonder he could stand at all. Calliope met her in the middle of the roof, nose to nose. You're in this as deep as I am. Forget what you did to Kate. You've been betraying the council from the beginning. You think they'll be so willing to forgive you for that? She said, a malicious glint in her eyes. You're dead either way. Ava smirked. I'm here because Daddy asked me to come. He's known everything this whole time, and as for why I helped you with Kate, her smile faded and she glanced at me. It's because Daddy knew we couldn't win the war without Henry. Even your own husband is against you. Calliope hissed, the golden aura around her nearly blinding now. Do you think I care why you did it? It happened. It's over. Because of you, I win. Henry loves me, not her, not anymore. That's the best part, said Ava. Henry doesn't love you, you fool. He never has. He's been pretending the whole time. I inhaled sharply, and Calliope spun around to face him. Is this true? She demanded. Henry's lips formed a thin line, and he gave Ava a reprimanding look. That was all the confirmation I needed. Calliope hadn't stolen him from me after all. He was still my Henry. Go! I pushed the thought as hard as I could in his direction. If you don't now, she's going to kill Milo. I'll be okay. He hesitated. Calliope was screaming at him, but her words became nothing but background noise as his voice surrounded me. You need to come with us. I can't. Yes, you can. The moment I leave, Calliope is going to try to kill you. I will not leave until I know you are safe. I glanced around the roof. Ava was still there. Nicholas still leaned helplessly against the wall, barely conscious and beaten within an inch of his life. I couldn't leave them, but Henry was right. There was nothing keeping Calliope from killing me now. Not with Cronus tied up in battle. Okay. Henry exhaled. Meet me in the bedroom at Olympus. I will. A pause. Ava's telling the truth. The words wrapped around me, a salve against all the pain Cronus and Calliope had caused us both. I know. We have to go. You first. I closed my eyes, and a second later that familiar sensation ran through me. When I opened them, I stood in the sunset bedroom I shared with Henry, and I held my breath. He had to come. He couldn't break his promise like that, not with Milo's safety yet. An ugly screech echoed through the heavens. Calliope. Panic seized me, but before it had time to set in, Henry and Milo appeared. I threw my arms around them, nearly sobbing with relief. You're safe, as are you. Henry pressed his lips to my forehead, but our reunion didn't last more than a few seconds. I must go back. You what? Henry held Milo out for me, and I froze. The baby's blue eyes were open, and he waved his little fists, watching me, waiting for me to finally take him. I ached to hold him, but the moment I touched him, I knew I would never be able to leave him again, and we had a war to win. Go on, said Henry quietly, and I shook my head, clasping my hands behind my back. He needs you. So do you, I said thickly. Refusing my son was the hardest thing I had ever done, but I had to. I'm not taking him, Henry. We held each other's gaze, and I refused to back down. Whether or not he wanted to admit it, he knew how this was going to end, and we didn't have time to argue. At last Henry sighed as a cradle appeared between us. Without looking away from me, he gently set the baby inside, tucking his blanket around him. Once Henry straightened, I snatched his hand, holding it with a crushing grip. I'm going with you, Henry winced. The deafening clash of the battle raged below us, and every second he wasn't there was another second we might lose. Kate, I must. If you go, I go. I cannot risk you, and I can't risk you. We're a team. We work together from here on out. No one gets left behind, and no one does something stupid without consulting the other first. A muscle in his jaw twitched. If you go back, Calliope will do everything in her power to kill you. I know. I squared my shoulders and summoned every last shred of bravery I had left. I was born mortal. I always knew I was going to die, but I'm not afraid of it. But I am afraid of losing you. I am terrified of eternity without you. And I you, he said quietly. Milo, if something happens to me, then you'll come back to take care of him, I said firmly. And if something happens to you, I'll do the same. I promise he won't be alone. Henry hesitated, and the sounds of the battle grew louder. We didn't have time for this. Henry, I love you. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm asking you to tell me what I can do to help. He opened his mouth, but before he could say a word, I cut him off again. Besides staying here. He managed a faint smile at that. We're a team, you say? A team. I touched his cheek. From now on until the end. Whether that's today or in a million years, we're in this together. A long moment passed. His eyes locked on mine, and the air seemed to still around us. In this cradle, Milo made another soft sound, and Henry deflated. There is one thing you could do to help. Anything. He set his hand over mine, and I released my grip on his wrist before threading my fingers through his. Did you see the way Cronus faltered when the girls attacked him? I shook my head. I can't tell what he's doing in that fog. He was distracted, enough for us to edge in closer. He squeezed my hand. I need you to fetch the girls from the nursery and do everything you can to divert his attention to the roof. If you do that, we might have a chance. A smile spread across my face. You didn't send them back to the underworld? Of course not. It was a brilliant idea. He bent down to brush his lips against mine. Now let's go win this war. I kissed him back. Together, together. I arrived alone in the peacock and gold hallway outside the nursery. Henry presumably appeared on the roof, but even though I strained my ears, I didn't hear any signs that the tide of battle had shifted. It's about time, said Persephone as I opened the nursery door. The other girls smiled behind her. I'm sorry, I said. We know, said Ingrid, tapping her temple. Henry already filled us in. Right, then let's go play chicken with the Titan. We raced to the roof, and I took the stairs 2 at a time. Every bone in my body drawn to Henry as if we were magnets. As we burst through the doors, however, I skidded to a stop. Ava and Calliope stood in the center, only inches apart. Ava glowed magenta, Calliope gold, and Cronus swirled behind them, a massive funnel of pure power. Henry wasn't there. Had he stayed in Olympus? No, I wasn't that lucky. I glanced upward. The streaks of light were dimmer than before. The council was losing, but another appeared, brighter than the others, and the fog seemed to part to make way for it. Henry had joined the battle. Go, I cried, and the girls hustled forward, picking up their weapons as they reached them. They might not have been deadly, but wherever they connected with the fog, it shimmered, and a shower of sparks burst through the darkness. I will kill you, Calliope's voice seemed magnified, louder than thunder. Once I've won, I will skin you alive and watch you bleed. Ava's wind-chimed laughter filtered through the air. You won't ever win. You deserve worse than fading. You deserve to have your name erased from history, and I'm going to make sure that happens. You're pathetic now, but just wait. Once I'm done, you'll be nothing. With everyone distracted, I skirted around the glowing goddesses, searching for the dagger. It wasn't in Calliope's hands, which meant that it had to be around here somewhere. Maybe she was hiding it in a pocket. But with the way that she and Ava were going at it, she would have taken a stab at her by now if she'd had it nearby. Come on, it had to be around here somewhere. There, I spotted the glinting dagger lying on the ground near the edge of the roof, where I'd stood only minutes before. Swiping it off the ground, I turned toward Calliope. It was now or never. I raced across the roof, holding the dagger like an ice pick. Calliope was so wrapped up in her argument with Ava that she didn't see me coming, and I slammed into her. The golden glow disappeared as she crumpled underneath me, hitting the ground hard. I pinned her in place with my knees. For one everlasting moment, we stared at each other, my grim satisfaction reflecting as horror in her eyes. I raised the dagger. This time I wouldn't hesitate. Father, she screamed at the instant I thrust the weapon toward her neck. Even as the word was leaving her lips, a wisp of fog appeared, and time seemed to slow around us. The closer I got, the harder it was to move, and the dagger stopped completely 1/2 inch from her throat. No matter how hard I tried, it wouldn't budge. Nice try, Kate, said Calliope with a sneer. Pity that's all you're ever capable of. A gust of wind hit me, ripping the blade from my hand. With a shriek, I flew through the air and landed hard on my back, cracking the stone roof beneath me. The fog sliced through the wound in my chest, and I groaned. So this is how it ends, said Calliope, and scooped up the dagger. I'd say something witty, but you're just not worth it. I squeezed my eyes shut, and an enraged scream filled the air, mingling with the crash of the ocean until I could no longer tell one from the other. This was it. This was the end. 1 second, 2 seconds. The pain never came. A collective gasp echoed across the roof and through the sky as if the entire world had drawn its breath at the same time. Finally, I had to look. Calliope stood near me, but her hand was empty, the knife was gone, and between us crouched Ava, the handle of the dagger buried directly above her heart. Chapter 19. Light. Behind me, Nicholas cried out, and his grief rose above the wind. The pinpricks of light In the unnaturally black sky echoed his pain, and at last I understood. Ava, as she sank to the ground, and I crawled to her side. My hand hovered over the wound. It was deep. Too deep not to be fatal, unless I got the dagger out before the fog could penetrate her heart. Could I without making it worse? Wasn't much of a choice. If I didn't, she would die for sure. I gripped the handle. This is going to hurt. Slowly I pulled it out, and her screams shattered a clamor of battle. As soon as the blade was free from her chest, I pressed my hand against the wound, willing the blood to stop flowing. She couldn't die, not after all of this. I'm sorry, she wheezed, her eyes rimmed with red. I thought it was for the best. I thought you did nothing wrong. Her face swam in front of me, and I blinked rapidly. Thank you. I'm so sorry I ever doubted you. You forgive me? She whispered. Of course. I pressed my lips to her forehead. I love you. A trickle of blood escaped the corner of her mouth. Finish this, she said, barely audible. For one horrible moment, I thought she wanted me to kill her, but she wrapped her cold fingers over my fist, the one that held the dagger, and I understood. I glanced over my shoulder. Calliope stared at Ava, and despite all her posturing, undeniable shock spread across her face. Why? Wasn't this exactly what she meant to do? No, this was an accident. She hadn't been aiming for Ava. She'd been aiming for me. Either way, I couldn't afford to give her the chance to build her defenses. Lashing out, I went for her ankle, and grim satisfaction filled me as the blade sliced through skin and bone. Collapsing to the ground, she screamed, a horrible, gut-wrenching sound that resonated through every cell of my body. With inhuman strength, she clawed at my hand, fighting to dislodge the dagger. It's over, Kate. Let it go. As she tried to take the blade from me, it cut her palms to ribbons, and her blood flowed freely down my arm. Her fingers dug underneath mine, and she began to pry the dagger loose from my hand. You really don't know when to quit, do you? She said in that girlish voice. Just a few seconds more, and she would have it. I cried out as the handle began to slip from my bloody grip, and the tears of frustration streaked down my face. I'm going to get Henry back, and Callum will be mine. He's my son, not yours. There's nothing you can do about it. I'll make sure whenever he hears your name, he knows you abandoned him. I'll make sure he knows you never loved him. I'll make sure he hates you more than he hates anyone in the... I roared, half blind with rage. My hand slipped past her, and between us something made a sickening wet sound. She doubled over and went rigid, her eyes round with shock. Breathing heavily, I tried to shove her off me, my fist still wrapped around the handle of the dagger. Something was wrong, though. When I tried to pull back, the dagger resisted, and Calliope folded her body around my arm. Her cries turned to gurgles, and she tore at my elbow with what little strength she had left. The weapon slipped from my grip, and she fell away, clawing at her chest. I scrambled back. The silver handle stuck out of her chest at a sideways angle through her sternum and pointing directly to her heart. Blood poured from the wound, and she convulsed, the golden aura around her fading until there was nothing left. You, she managed, but the rest of her words died along with her. Her body stilled, and her eyes stared at me, empty and unseeing. No, I whispered, you did this to yourself. All at once the sky exploded, and white blasted through the darkness. The din of war gave way to a chorus of the most beautiful voices I'd ever heard, and underneath me, Calliope's body began to glow again. I hurried back to Ava's side and took her hand. Nicholas joined us. Despite the fat tears rolling down his cheeks, he was smiling. The black clouds reformed into a funnel, and it grew smaller and more concentrated until the darkness formed a man, Cronus. Rhea, he boomed, his voice everywhere at once. The white light took form. As well as Rhea descended from the sky, she still wore the form of the little girl she'd been in Africa, but despite her stature, she radiated power. Moving past Cronus as if he weren't even there, Rhea knelt beside Calliope's empty body. My daughter, she whispered. At her touch, the blood disappeared, and the knife fell to the ground, dull and void of Titan power. What has happened to you? I wiped my eyes, smearing blood across my face. The overwhelming weight of what I'd done hit me. My body sagged under the pressure. I'd killed her child. Everything I'd feared Calliope doing to Milo, I'd done to Rhea. I really was a murderer. I hadn't meant to do it, though. I'd only been protecting myself. Calliope was the one who hadn't given up. She was the one who'd gone after me. She was the one who'd started this all. If I'd had the chance to do it again, though, I would have. I'm sorry, I said thickly. I had no choice. A silver tear rolled down Rhea's cheek. No, I suppose he did not. One by one, the other gods joined us on the roof, no longer hindered by Cronus. They didn't go to Calliope and Rhea, though. Instead, they appeared in a circle around Ava, Nicholas, and me. Walter arrived first, and he sat on the cracked roof beside me, drawing her head into his lap. He petted her hair, whispering words I couldn't hear, and Ava smiled weakly. A strange light emanated from his hands, and I knew without asking that somehow he was keeping her alive. Please, mother, said Walter, his voice choked. I'd never seen him cry before. You cannot save your daughter, but you can save mine. Rhea grew still. What's done is done. My daughter chose this path, and so did yours. The world around me narrowed until all I could feel was Ava's hand in mine, growing colder by the second. No, it was completely within Rhea's power to save Ava. She had to. You can't just let her die. I struggled to stand, but someone had set their hands on my shoulders, holding me down. Henry. All she was trying to do was stop Cronus. She was doing what you wouldn't. Rhea said nothing. Cronus knelt beside her, and though his expression was emotionless, he touched Calliope's face. Please, Cronus, I begged. Ava doesn't have to die. He looked at me, and in that moment I allowed myself to hope. Maybe after all that time, he'd gained an ounce of humanity. Without a word, he gestured toward us, and a wave of pleasant numbness passed through my body. The fire inside me cooled. He'd healed me. He understood after all. I clasped Ava's hands and looked down at her, but instead of stopping, blood flowed from her chest with every weakened beat of her heart. But I looked up, and Walter bowed his head. She does not have to die, but she will, said Cronus. Consider us even. The edges of my vision darkened, and the sunset sky seemed to spin until everything was a blur. Even, I whispered, and as if every drop of grief and despair and guilt rushed out of me at the same time, I screamed, You're letting her die so we'll be even? I struggled against Henry's grip, but he wrapped his arms around me so tightly I could barely move. Kate, calm down, he said, his breath warm against my ear, but it was pointless. He's killing her, I shrieked, and James knelt beside Henry. My outrage smothered the relief that came with knowing he was all right. It's not my fault. You can't make this my fault. It's okay, whispered Ava's voice, and her fingers tightened around mine. You're right. It isn't your fault. I clung to her hand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It shouldn't be like this. But it is. I'm ready. A loud hiccuping sob escaped me. We'll find a way around this, I promise. I'll find a way to fix you. A faint smile appeared on Ava's blood-stained lips. Not this time, Kate. I love you. We all do, even if some of us aren't very good at showing it sometimes. Her blue eyes, fast draining of life, turned toward Henry. Don't forget that, or me, okay? I won't ever fade completely as long as someone's here to remember me. I couldn't breathe. Sob after sob ripped through me, and it was all I could do to speak. I won't. One by one, the members of the council joined Ava to silently say their goodbyes. Everyone, even Dylan, cried wordlessly. As destroyed as I was, it had to be nothing compared to what they were all going through, and I forced myself into silence. But even though it was selfish, I couldn't let go of her hand. Walter didn't stop stroking her hair either, his fingers glowing with the only thing keeping her alive. In those precious few moments, he'd aged 1,000 years. At last the sun dipped below the horizon. The light in Walter's hands died, and just like that, Ava was gone. The world went silent. Even the ocean grew still, and the violet shades of dusk hung in the sky far longer than they should have. No one spoke. No one moved. No one took that step from before into after, and we all lingered together in that eternal moment. It should have never ended, but the council couldn't deny time forever. Eventually, Henry set his hand on my back, and though he was gentle, he pried my fingers from Ava's cold ones. The separation cut through me, but there was nothing I could do. She was dead. Walter cleared his throat and set her head down on the rooftop. Standing on shaking legs, he struggled to draw himself to his full height, clearly weakened. An eye for an eye, he said. Let it not happen again. Will you go peacefully, father? No, said Cronus. Before fury could overtake what little sense of self-preservation I had left, Henry rubbed my back, his touch soothing the fire out of me. You will, said Rhea. It is over. I will not allow you to continue this cycle of destruction. They have taken one of ours, and we have taken one of theirs. That is the end. Cronus's form began to blur into black fog, but as soon as it started, white light encased him, and he growled. Let me go, Rhea. I will not, she said with a quiet resolve. Neither will the council. This is their world now, and you have proven you have no place in it. I will only repeat our son once. Will you go peacefully? Silence. Then you leave me with no choice, said Rhea, and the light around Cronus grew blindingly bright. I looked away, and Cronus cried out, the first real sound of pain I'd ever heard from him. Good, he deserved it. Stop, I will go. Go peacefully, he managed to say, and the light lessened. Very well, my son, said Rhea, and Henry released me. I will return shortly, he said, kissing my hair. James, take care of her. And as he stood, James' arms replaced Henry's, and for the first time I took a good look at the council. Everyone was here, even Ella and Theo, everyone except, where's my mother? All the blood drained from my face as the world once again began to spin. James, where is she? She's fine, he said quickly. I promise, she's with Milo. I want to see her, I said, and he nodded, running his fingers through my hair like Walter had done for Ava. Maybe he thought it would help, but the hollowness inside me didn't lessen. I wasn't sure it ever would. Rhea touched Cronus's elbow, and Henry took her hand. My eyes met his, and he nodded once before the three of them disappeared. Undoubtedly led back to Tartarus. The last thing I wanted was to let him out of my sight, and familiar dread pulled in my stomach. What if something went wrong and I never saw him again? Before my fear could work itself into anything substantial, James gathered me up and helped me to my feet. His cheek glistened, so I brushed the pad of my thumb against his wet skin. I'm sorry, I couldn't say it enough. James shook his head, his lips moving as he fought to find his voice. I hugged him, and he clung to me, needing me as much as I needed him. Come on, he said, let's go home. My mother was waiting for us in Olympus, rocking Milo's cradle as he slept. Relieved, I staggered toward her, barely able to see straight. Oh, my darling, you're all right, she cried, throwing her arms around me. For a moment I couldn't breathe, but I didn't care. She was all right. Milo was all right. Henry was all right. And Ava wasn't. All at once, what was left of my inner strength crumbled. Ava's dead, I whispered, choking on the words. My mother tensed, and from the doorway James cleared his throat. Calliope as well, he said roughly. Rhea and Henry are escorting Cronus back to Tartarus now. A small victory, my mother said, as her eyes filled with tears. At least, she didn't finish. For the first time in my life, my mother shattered. Her knees gave out, and she eased down onto the edge of her bed. Though I desperately wanted to go to Milo, I curled up with her, struggling to hold it together while she cried. She'd spent years pouring her strength into me and hiding her hurt, so mine wouldn't worsen. Now it was my turn. The way we treated her this past year, my mother created a handkerchief and dabbed her eyes. She shouldn't have been there. We should have let her come back when she asked. It's not your fault, I said. Walter would have been the one to make that decision. She tried to tell me why she was doing it so many times, and I never listened. Cronus, my voice broke. He wouldn't save her. He healed me, and he could have healed her too, but because of me, he refused. My mother leaned her head against mine and drew me into her arms. It is not your fault either, she croaked. But there was conviction in her voice. Cronus would have never saved her. Even if you'd been by his side and fulfilled your promises to him, honor means nothing to him. He's defined by the power he has, and all you did was bruise his ego. You did not change who he is or who he chooses to be. I hiccuped. I hated her so much. I thought I blamed her for everything, and all she was trying to do was help me or look after Milo or save Nicholas's life, and Walter did what he had to do in order to win the war. My mother tucked a lock of hair behind my ear. He has his own demons to face now. My chin trembled. I should have done something. I should have listened or fought for her to be forgiven or forgiven her or anything. You did, said James. You did all of those things. Your mother's right. It isn't your fault. It isn't her fault. It isn't Ava's fault. It's Calliope's. And she's gone now. There's nothing more we can do but remember Ava and keep on loving her. I nodded tightly. I could give her that, and I would. We all would. In the cradle, Milo let out a soft cry. It seems like someone's eager to see you again, said my mother. Despite her red-rimmed eyes, she managed to smile as she scooped him up. Do you want to hold him? More than anything in the world. As I reached for him, however, I hesitated. A few more inches and I would feel him. He was really there. An invisible barrier full of questions and doubts held me back, and I lowered my hands in my lap. What if I can't do this? What if I can't be his mother? You already are, she said, and I shook my head. I'm not as good at this or as strong as you are. She rested her head against mine again, and her hair tickled my neck. Yes, you are. In so many ways, you're stronger than I've ever been. Sadness doesn't equal weakness, sweetheart. If anything, it shows the love you have inside you, and nothing stronger in this world exists. Ava knew that better than all of us. A shadow moved in the doorway. Your mother's right, you know, said Henry. The best way we can honor Ava is by loving the people in our lives as much as we can. That's all she would have wanted. Sitting on the mattress beside me, he gave my mother a smile. I see you've met my son. He's beautiful, said my mother. And Milo let out another soft wail. He wants you, Kate. Wiping my cheeks with my bloody sleeves, I nodded. My mother placed Milo in my arms, and he settled against me, a perfect fit. He was warmer than I had expected, and heavier as well. Turning his head toward me, he nuzzled my chest, and my heart nearly burst. Just like this, murmured my mother, adjusting my elbow so I was supporting his head. There you go. Look at that, said James. You're a natural. As Milo calmed, he stared up at me with his big blue eyes. Whatever connection we'd managed to forge before intensified, and in that moment, my world shifted. He was so beautiful and innocent, and I would spend eternity making sure he had the chance to stay that way. He would never know war or hatred or the agony of loss. He would never spend his days counting down to a loved one's last. He would never feel alone or unworthy or unloved. He would know happiness. He would know peace. He would know family, and he would always have me and Henry. A tear dripped down my chin, falling and hitting Milo on the nose. He made a face, and Henry chuckled. My mother stood. I'll leave you 3B, she said, and though she was smiling, the grief hadn't left her voice. I wasn't sure it ever would completely. Together she and James exited the room, closing the door behind them. He looked so much like you, murmured Henry. Every time I held him, all I could see was your face. I missed you, Kate. I brushed my knuckles against Milo's cheek. He may have had my eyes, but he had Henry's dark hair and his ears. Whatever happened on the island between you and Calliope, he tensed. Kate, it doesn't matter, I looked at him. You did what you had to do to protect Milo. I know that. His hand slipped up my back, and he squeezed my shoulder. Nothing happened. Ava never used her powers on me. I was pretending the entire time. I leaned forward and kissed him. His lips were sweet against mine, and I didn't let him go until Milo whimpered between us. We both knew pretending meant he'd somehow convinced her to love. He'd somehow had to convince her he loved her. Part of me burned with the need to hear everything, but none of it mattered, and I wasn't about to let Calliope hurt us from the grave. Whatever Henry had endured, we would get through it together. One day, if he wanted to talk about it, I would listen. But until then, I would pretend I believed him. To protect and love him the way he protected and loved me. We are a family, and no one, not Calliope, not Cronus, not even death itself, could take that from us. Chapter 20. Eternal. Sometime during the night, I untangled myself from Henry and slipped out of bed. He slept soundly, clearly exhausted after the battle. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fall asleep. Reaching into the cradle, I touched Milo's forehead to make sure he was still there. Reassured by the rise and fall of his chest, I padded out of the room, closing the door behind me. Even in the dead of night, the ceiling glowed brilliant blue, and the magnificent sunset swirled underneath me. I didn't consciously decide where to go. One minute I stood in the hallway, and the next my feet carried me into the throne room in search of someone else. After the evening we'd all had, chances were slim anyone else would be awake, but it was worth a shot. In the entranceway I stopped cold. The sky wasn't blue here. Instead, the ceiling was dark as night, and the stars twinkled above us. The thrones were gone, and in their place a glass coffin rested on a raised platform. Inside, dressed in a white gown with roses in her hair, lay Ava. Without thinking, I crossed the room and pressed my palm against the glass. Her lips were the color of cherries, and in the dim light I could almost see her smile. A lump formed in my throat. I opened my mouth to say something, to apologize, to promise I'd never forget her, to forgive her again and again until the universe had no choice but to believe me. But I couldn't force out the words. She couldn't hear them anyway, and I'd said it all in her last moments. She already knew. She isn't really there. I scowled. Leave me alone. A rustle of fabric, soft footsteps, and Walter stood by my side, looking every bit as aged as he had on the rooftop. It's a reflection of sorts, but more realistic than a simple picture. I pulled my hand from the glass and shifted half a step away from him. Where's her body? Gone, he said, back to the universe. Then why is this hologram here? The empty throne, the empty bedroom, the empty hole in our lives where she'd once been, as if all of that wasn't enough to remind us she was gone. Walter inhaled deeply. As he exhaled, faint thunder rumbled through the throne room. She lived a very long time, and her life touched many others. Those who wish to say her goodbyes will have the opportunity to do so. Yet you aren't going to do the same for Calliope. He winced. My wife chose her path. She chose to separate herself from the council. Ava did not. No, she didn't, I said. You chose it for her. You're the reason she died. Walter stared into the coffin. I have made many mistakes. Mistakes, my snarl echoed from one end of the room to the other. Ava's dead, and all you can say is that you made some mistakes? Walter faltered. Though he tried to draw himself up to his full height, tears spilled down his face, defeating any intention he had of intimidating me. It is not your place to say. You could not possibly know the circumstances. I know Ava's dead. I know she only joined Calliope because you told her to. For Nicholas, he said, for the greater good. Is this worth the greater good? I gestured to the coffin. Is this worth knowing that if it hadn't been for you, Ava would still be alive? She would not be alive, he said hoarsely. None of us would be. Henry would have never joined the fight, and Cronus would have won. It is as simple as that. Rhea won the war, not Henry. He wasn't even fighting on our side for most of the battle. Yes, he was, said Walter. On the rooftop, he was countering Calliope's abilities, a difficult thing for any of us to do, even more difficult without being discovered, but he managed. When he came to us with your plans to surrender to Cronus, he knew what he intended to do, and with Ava aware that Calliope wanted to take Henry as well, we set up the ruse. All along, he was feeding us information about her and Cronus's tactics. We would have never stood a fighting chance without his help or without Ava's help. She is the reason. You are the reason he agreed to fight at all. There had to be another way to keep Ava out of it. There's always another way. If there was, do you think I would have risked her? Said Walter. Do you truly believe if there had been any feasible alternative to draw Henry into the war without her, you could have asked, you could have given him time. You didn't have to play Calliope's games and risk everyone's lives. At last I faced him. We are not pieces on a chessboard, and that's how you treated us, and now you're paying for it. We all are, so I hope whatever lies you've told yourself to keep you warm at night, because no one in their right mind is going to bother with you once everyone knows what you did. He touched the casket, and all the fight drained out of him, leaving a husk of a man where the king of the gods stood only moments before. I know what I deserve. I do not need anyone, you or the fates or the universe itself, to detail the mistakes I have made. I am paying for it now, and I will pay for it throughout the rest of my eternal existence. If that is not the hell you wish for me, then I do not know how much more I could possibly hurt or to satisfy your desire for vengeance, daughter. I am not your daughter. Walter bowed his head. Every instinct I had screamed for me to leave before retaliated somehow. Emotionally, physically, it did not matter, but my feet refused to move. This was the longest conversation I'd ever had with a man who was supposedly my father, and this was what he'd come to. You are my daughter as surely as Ava was, he said quietly. She was the only one of my children who ever bothered to see me for who I really am. The others only ever saw power. Calliope only ever saw a philanderer. But Ava understood the love I have for you all. She understood that a man can feel things he does not express, that a lack of expression does not deplete that love. I know that. She'd been the one to insist Henry loved me no matter what. You realize if you'd never cheated, none of this would have ever happened? If I never cheated, you would have never been born. He looked at me with lightning in his eyes, and as held his stare. James would have never been born. Ella and Theo, Irene, Persephone, I love my wife. My misdeeds are not her fault, but I will not apologize to her or to any other for bringing my children into this world, including you. Then you're no better than she is. Love doesn't give you a free pass to hurt your family. You do remember what family is, right? He tilted his head. And what do you mean by that? You never came to see me. I dug my nails into my palms. If I could draw blood, then maybe the fury trying to claw its way out of me would have some release. You knew what I was going through after Mom was diagnosed, but you didn't care. I have many mortal children, he said slowly. There was no guarantee you would pass the test, and I did not want to risk forging a connection with you in case you did not. Why? Because you were worried about your precious secret being revealed? Because after everything your mother told me about you, I knew that if I came to see you, I would love you instantly. The pain of losing children I have never known is hard enough, but to lose one I love, he stroked the edge of the glass coffin. My shoulders shook with silent sobs. I needed you. I needed someone to tell me it would be okay. I needed to know I wasn't alone, and you couldn't bother with me because you were too afraid to love me? The council has watched over you from the beginning, playing bits and parts of your life, loving and protecting you as we did in Eden. You were never alone, Kate, even in your darkest of days. But I didn't know, I burst. It doesn't make any difference if I never knew. I'm sorry, his voice broke. I'm sorry for never being the father you needed. I'm sorry for not being the king my people deserve, and I am so sorry for letting my daughter make the ultimate sacrifice. I do not expect you or anyone else in this world to forgive me now that she is gone, but I hope one day, for Ava's sake, you will allow me to be your family, to be your father as I should have been when you were growing up. It is what Ava would have wanted for us both. I wanted to spit in his face to tell him to go screw himself and find another daughter who was willing to love such a manipulative creep. But the truth of what he was saying froze me in place. He was right. This was what Ava would have wanted, not only because I needed a father, but because Walter needed a daughter who loved him despite his flaws, who understood him and gave him a chance. I'd done my best to show everyone, even Calliope and Cronus, that compassion and understanding. Ava would have wanted me to do the same for him, to not fail Walter like I'd failed her. You're asking for more than I know how to give, I said quietly, and all the fight drained out of me. I focused on the image of Ava's face again. You hurt me. You hurt my mother, and you hurt our family. He set a tentative hand on my shoulder. I know, and I will spend eternity doing what I can to make it up to you. I cannot promise much, but I do promise that you will always have me, and you will always have all of us, as it should have been from the beginning. Pressing my swollen lips together, I nodded. After all the pain I'd caused, I couldn't forgive him as we stood there side by side, but someday I would try. For Ava. The glass coffin remained in the throne room for 3 days, and the image of Ava was never alone. At first, the only council members came to see her, each of us wanting to be alone with her. After all, we had our turn. Walter opened up the portal to Olympus, allowing others to come through without assistance. As the hours passed and news of her death spread, gods I'd never seen before appeared in Olympus to pay their respects. Some of the names were familiar, but nothing prepared me for the sheer number Amber had touched in her life. The throne room was always full in those 3 days of mourning, and the veil of sadness only grew heavier with each new face. A boy with blonde curls kept vigil by the coffin, never speaking a word. Both Nicholas and Dylan joined him at different times, and while he sat stiffly at Dylan's side, the boy seemed to relax in Nicholas's presence. Eric now, said Henry, as we lingered near the hallway and watched. Her oldest son. My vision blurred, and I had to excuse myself. I knew how deeply Ava had touched the rest of the council, but seeing paths her long life had forged, the family she'd formed in the millennia she'd lived, it only reopened wounds I was sure would never fully heal. On the third day, dawn crept across the starry ceiling. Walter called us all together, and we stood in a circle with the other gods, watching as the glass coffin filled with the light. At last the sunrise blended away the last vestiges of night, and the casket disappeared. While the rest of the earth-bound gods left one by one, Eris remained. The thrones returned, circling the spot where Ava's reflection had stood only moments before, and we each settled into our proper place. I cradled Milo, who slept soundly, and tried to ignore the empty seats on either side of Walter. Nicholas, the worse for wear but healing, set his hand on the armrest of the seashell throne that had been Ava's. As he brushed the tears from his cheeks, I looked away. Brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, said Walter into the silence, while we will forever mourn the loss of our own, the time has come to acknowledge that their positions among us must be filled. I glanced at my mother. Replacing Calliope made sense, like Henry couldn't rule the underworld alone. Surely the same was true for Walter and his realm. But Ava? She patted my hand. All in due time. I will handle the replacement of my queen, said Walter. In the meantime, I ask that Diana take the role temporarily and assist me as needed. Of course, said my mother, whatever I can do to help. Walter inclined his head. Thank you. As for Ava's place, we must once again scour the world to find one who is worthy. It will not be an easy task. Ava was, he paused, she was irreplaceable. We cannot pretend otherwise. But we must continue on. Kate? Yeah, I said. My mother's hand tightened around mine. I think it is appropriate that you take Ava's place temporarily, he added, until we find someone capable of filling her role. What of her duties in the underworld? Said Henry before I could protest. I need her by my side, especially now with the kingdom left unattended for so long. I am not asking for a great commitment on her part, said Walter, only enough to tide us over until we have found a new goddess. She can handle it during her summer months away. I shook my head. I'm staying in the underworld during the summer now. I don't want to leave Milo, or Henry, but that wasn't the sort of excuse Walter would understand. It would be no great thing for you to focus on helping us with Ava's duties in the meantime, said Walter. Of us all, you are best suited for the role, at least for a short period of time. A short period of time to Walter could have easily been 100 years. I can't, I said. I'm sorry, but I can't replace her, and I can't leave my family. I'll do it, said Eric. Even though his voice was high and boyish, he'd featured prominently in a few of the myths I'd learned, which meant he couldn't be that young after all. It's what my mother would have wanted. As generous an offer as it is, said Walter. You are not a member of the council. You do not have the ability. Eric's face fell, and seeing his disappointment on top of his grief as a punch to the gut. I'll help him, I blurted. He can report to me, and I'll make sure everything goes according to plan. Just as long as I don't have to leave the underworld for extended periods of time. Walter turned to Henry, who nodded once. That is acceptable to me, so long as Kate is not forced to any position she does not feel she is ready for. Very well, said Walter. In addition, I ask that Kate and Eric be in charge of finding a suitable candidate for a more permanent role. A goddess. He wanted us to find another goddess, a mortal to take the test and earn immortality the way I had. How? He shrugged. I do not particularly care how you handle it, only that it is done. Henry is familiar with the process. He can help you. Henry murmured his agreement, and just like that, it was up to me and Ava's son to find someone who could take over the role on the council, someone who couldn't possibly exist. Then again, Henry must have thought the same when he began his search for a new queen. If he could overcome his fears and hesitations, I could do the same. Okay, I said softly, I'll try. I know you will, said Walter, and you will do wonderfully. That may have been stretching it, but I would do Ava justice. She deserved that much. Across the circle, James smiled at me, and I managed a small one in return. Even if I wasn't up to the task, he would be there every step of the way. They would all be. The council wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. Dylan would probably never like me. They would always give each other knowing looks when I would never understand. Walter and I would probably spend most of forever butting heads, and it would be a long time before he saw me as an equal. But despite the fights, despite the lies, despite the frustration and secrets and eons of history I would never catch up on, they were my family now, and I wasn't letting them go for anything. Henry, Milo, and I returned to the underworld the next morning. Despite the gloominess of the caverns, there was nowhere else I would have rather been. We were home. As we entered our red and gold bedroom, I stopped in the doorway and gazed around, swallowing the lump in my throat. Ava had decorated it before I'd arrived the year before. How long would it be before everything stopped reminding me of her? Never, I hoped. I'd keep my promise to remember her always, even if the guilt and pain killed me. Henry bowed his head until his face was only inches from mine. It will get easier. Promise? I said. Yes. He pressed his lips to my forehead. I cannot tell you if it will ever go away. But that pain is part of you now. It is part of all of us, and because we know it, because we have had to survive it, we will do what we must to make sure we never have to experience it again. I exhaled. I miss her. I don't know how Walter expects us to just replace her like that. I never thought I would find a replacement for Persephone either, he said quietly, and as it happens, I did not. I found something even better. I found you. My hand rested over his heart, and I didn't speak. Words couldn't have possibly described how much I loved him in that moment. Burying his nose in my hair, Henry held me as he swayed back and forth to a silent rhythm. You will never find someone to replace Ava because that person does not exist, he murmured. But you will find someone who understands love as Ava did, who embodies it, who has without question inherited the passion and devotion that divide her. And one day, perhaps in a few years, perhaps many centuries from now, you will stop in the middle of whatever you are doing and look around and you will realize that things are okay again, perhaps never completely whole because nothing can fill that gap of loss. But the parts around it will grow. You will love, you will be happy, you will laugh again, and that day will be better than today, I promise. With the baby between us, I hugged him, burying my nose in the crook of his neck. I love you, I whispered. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for letting me in. I'm the one who should be thanking you. His lips brushed against my hair, and his fingers tangled in the ends as he splayed his hand across my back. I will for the rest of eternity. You saved my life, Kate. You gave me everything. There is nothing I would rather do than be with you forever. You will be, I mumbled into his chest. I'm never letting you go again. He pulled away enough to touch his lips to mine. Good. I captured him in another kiss, deeper this time and full of everything I couldn't say. How much I loved him, how thankful I was, not just for him, but for the family we had together, all of it. I may not have saved his I may have saved his life, but he'd saved mine as well. Neither of us would ever have to go through that dark loneliness again. Between us, Milo made a small sound, and I broke the kiss to gaze down at him. He gurgled and waved his tiny fist. Yes, all right, a kiss for you too, I said, grinning, and I dropped one to his forehead. Such a demanding little boy. The staff put together a nursery for Milo in the room next to ours, said Henry. He has everything he needs. Yes, he does. I looked up at Henry once more. Can you do me a favor? Of course, he said. I hesitated, and a moment later I launched into the most difficult question I'd ever asked him. To Henry's credit, he didn't argue. He didn't like it, but neither did I. That didn't change anything. It was the right thing to do. He took my hand, and slowly the bedroom around us faded, replaced by black rock and a monstrous cavern, the entrance to Tartarus. I sealed off the pathway in the wall, said Henry. Only we can reach it now. I nodded. No need to take any chances. Wordlessly, I kissed Milo again and handed him to Henry. My arms felt empty without him, but he'd been in enough danger to last him an eternal lifetime. He would be safe with Henry no matter what happened. Slowly, I made my way to the gate. The bars, once carved out of black rock itself, now glowed with white light. Rhea. I stood up as straight as I could. Cronus, I want to talk to you. For several seconds, nothing happened. Not that I expected him to come running the moment I called, but he didn't have to make this difficult. Please, I said, the words sour on my tongue. I won't wait forever. At last an opaque fog slithered across the ground, but it stopped short of the bars. Unlike before, where you'd had enough of a reach to wreak havoc in the underworld, Cronus was completely trapped now. The fog solidified into a silhouette of a man, and Cronus stepped toward the gate as tall and proud as ever. Kate, my darling, I knew you'd come back for me. I'm not here to release you, I said. I'm here to be with you. Oh, said Cronus, eyebrow raised. He focused on something behind me, and I scowled. He had no right to look at Henry or Milo after everything he'd done. In what manner? As your friend. And if not that, then to keep you company. Even if I would have rather burned in a lake of fire. No one should be alone like this for eternity. Cronus's expression grew thoughtful. I did not realize you cared. I don't, I said coolly. I hate you for what you did to my family. I hate you for not healing Ava. I hate you for being a megalomaniac who can't see past your own desires. But you saved my son's life the day he was born, and I will never forget that. I paused. I know what it feels like to stare into a black future with no one let in your life. And no one deserves that. So I'm going to come see you. Not every day, but enough to make sure someone's watching you. Enough to make sure you're not alone. He narrowed his eyes. And if I do not wish for you to come, too bad. This is how it's going to be, whether you like it or not, so might as well get used to it. A long moment passed, and at last Cronus nodded. Very well, until then. He disappeared into the fog, and the tendrils drifted back until the darkness swallowed him completely. I took a shaky breath, trying to calm my racing heart, and Henry placed his hand on my back. I love you, he murmured. Those 3 words would never lose their magic, even if you are frustratingly good sometimes. I brushed my fingers against Milo's cheek, reassuring myself for the 100th time that he was still there. Someone on the council needs to be, I said, and Henry chuckled. Yes, I suppose you are right. Now come. He took my hand, his touch a reminder of everything about this world that I loved. Let's go home. The black rock around us faded, leaving only lingering remnants of the war and heartache and we'd battled. Henry was right. It would get better in time, as all things did. As much as loss had defined us, so did our capacity for hope. And from here on out, no matter what the future had in store for us, we would face it together always. Guide of Gods. Zeus, Walter, Hera, Calliope, Poseidon, Philip, Demeter, Diana, Hades, Henry, Hestia, Sophia, Ares, Dylan, Aphrodite, Ava, Hermes, James, Athena, Irene, Apollo, Theo, Artemis, Ella, Hephaestus, Nicholas, Dionysius, Xander. That was the end of that. Um, what's after that is not exactly. It's not a continuation, but it's a retelling of the myths using the renamings um, that the author chose. So it's 5 novellas after that that are all tied into one, called The Goddess Legacy. Um, I can read that another time. I think maybe I'll break that up though into like 5 separate streams. I feel like that only makes sense. uh, Depending, like I don't remember how long each novella actually was. I don't remember Goddess Legacy being very long, but I don't remember how long it really is. Anyway, thank you for listening. I loved her way of retelling the. I mean, in a way, it's kind of like she is retelling, but also, but in this, she. I love the way that she took the characters and she kind of like gave them. She gave more stories to the characters with those 3 books. Anyway, thank you for listening. I might read um, the Goddess Legacy novellas sometime. I just don't know how long it is.